and anyone who wants it, my
We
judge,
get it!
my
Dumb fuck!
judge.
We get it! Holy shit, you said it 10 minutes ago! We get it!
Wait, is-
Yeah,
Bro, don't
can
interrupt
I
me, bro.
finish? Because we work so hard. Every individual did do great.
We?
We can debate a
I'm
bit.
working hard right now! Shut up!
Good job, Haru. That was sick.
I remember! Because it took 17 years to say your fucking judgment! I'm
okay.
gonna call him a slur, I swear to God. I'm gonna do it.
Hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yep.
Go ahead, Brett. So, I guess with that, there's 25 people in here. Thank you guys for being here. Continue to please tap the screen, share the live, and we're gonna get started. Audience, panelists, thank you guys for being here. This is gonna be Cocomania 3, a series where I host debates by myself. The Day of Debates series has transformed into something else where I'm working with AR and OG Kylo to host professional debates and bring professional, educational, and entertaining debates to social media, or mainly TikTok. Today we have an event where Ceasetoknow is going to be debating against Who on the topic, trans identities are valid. Ceasetoknow is taking the affirmative, Who is taking the negation, and we're going to have audience vote as well as judges votes with our 5 brilliant judges here, very smart and qualified in their fields. We've got Cage, we've got Mob, we've got Logic Troll, we've got Haru, and we've got C. In regards to what the format's going to be, it's going to be 8-minute openers, then it's going to be 1 round of 8-minute cross-examination. Then it's going to be a 14-minute open discussion, and then 5-minute closers. So the debate should be about 60 or maybe roughly 60 minutes. But here, let me check just one more time to verify. And
Much longer till we're starting?
and yeah, we're gonna start right now. So 8-minute openers, 8-minute cross-examination, 5-minute cross-examination, and then 14 minutes open dialogue, then 5-minute closers. That's what it's gonna be. So yeah,
Wait, you said 5 minutes cross-examination? I thought you said 8 last time.
Yeah, bro. I thought we were doing 2 5-minute rounds of cross exam.
Oh, I thought you said 2 8-minute rounds. That's what I thought you said.
Oh no, so it's gonna be 8-minute openers, 8-minute cross, and then 5-minute cross. Then you guys get a 14
Oh, gotcha.
open
Oh,
dialogue.
okay, I got you.
And then with that, we can get started. There's 28 people in here. Thank you guys for liking the live. Thank you guys for jumping. We're gonna get started now. So we're gonna start with Ceasetoknow. We're gonna get
Background noise. Somebody's.
I think Hudis, you might have a little bit of background noise, but yeah, Ceasetoknow, you're gonna get an 8-minute opener, and you can start. I'll start the timer whenever you say your first word.
Okay. So thank you again for the opportunity to debate in your platform. Tonight's topic of debate is, are trans identities valid? So firstly, let's define terms. By valid, what it is I mean is that it reflects a real phenomena that is understandable and able to be communicated, rather than contradictory or some incoherent proposition. Next, let's define gender identity. Gender identity is one psychological experience of their biological sex and of their society. Typically, if that experience is one of alignment, then the person is cisgendered. Typically, if that experience is instead one of prolonged incongruence, that person is transgender. Gender here is conceptually distinct from biological sex, and although the first is in relation to the second, it is not synonymous with it. This psychological relationship is going to consist of cluster concepts relating to the biological and the societal. Cluster concepts are ones that are defined by a weighted list of criteria, such that no one of these criteria is either necessary or sufficient for membership. In other words, some of the categories that we construct in the world do not require necessary conditions. The concept of man and woman is exactly this type of cluster concept. The gender-critical mob will have you believe that the new age woke liberal boogeymen have hijacked language and try to change the definition of the term man and woman. Firstly, this is to be confused about language. There is no such thing as a correct definition. All that matters when it comes to linguistics is that context and meaning is understood and communicated to the next person. We can also examine the pragmatic utilization of terms. Secondly, their claim is historically confused. The term man and woman have always expressed concepts that do not reduce solely to biology. Therefore, there's always been multiple definitions. The fact that the same word can have multiple definitions in different contexts does not make anything contradictory or incoherent. In fact, in the English language, this is defined as a homonym, which means two or more words having the same spelling or pronunciation, but different meanings and even origins. So here's an example. If I say Sarah is blue in one sense but not blue in the other, it's actually not a contradiction in a context where I clarify that I'm using blue in two different ways. In one context, I'm saying she painted her body blue for a Halloween costume. In another, I mean to say that she's not blue, meaning she's not depressed. Here's another example, the label of father. The label father can mean the biologically male bringer of offspring, but it can also mean a societal role of a step-parent. The word trans woman, from my worldview, functions similarly to that of step-parent. No one has trouble understanding the term step-parent. A parent is still a parent, regardless of their biological relation. So the fact that multiple definitions exist for the word woman should be extremely easy for everyone to accept. What follows from this understanding is that trans identities are valid, because that identity is going to refer to one of the definitions. If we were to take seriously my opponent's view, we would have to accept that prior to the invention of biology, human beings had no capacity to categorize men and women. We would also have to accept that even today, we have no way to categorize the two when we are out in the world. This is because we don't have access to people's genitals, chromosomes, or gametes. Right? What we have access to is simply what the people look like externally and what it is they tell us about their internal experience and their identity. So this is obviously an absurd position to take. Our experience of daily life and the common ways in which we use these words undermine the rationality of using the word woman only in a biological way. So a trans man is not saying something incoherent when, despite being biologically female, they call themselves a man. This is because in this context, the word man is being used not to refer to biology, but rather psychology and society. Therefore, the trans identity of a trans man is absolutely valid and not incoherent. Now, I want to make a prediction. My opponent will ask me what it is that makes a man and what makes a woman a woman. When I give him a potential trait, he will treat it as though I'm arguing that it is a necessary one. For example, having long hair. But my claim is not that a singular trait, but rather a collection of potential traits grounded in a spectrum of potential experiences, and this is particularly important, specific intentions is what matters here. If my opponent conflates potential versus necessary, he's simply not tracking. My view is that to be a man, a person would have to correspond to at least one of three categories. They would either have to be biologically male, and or they'd have to possess the psychological schema that aligns with the classic concept of maleness, and or they'd have to meet the cultural and societal experiences that are uniquely attributed to manhood rather than womanhood. Any one of those three would be sufficient conditions to fit the category of man. Same would be true to the definition of woman, but in relation to femaleness and womanhood instead. Just to clarify, the schema of femaleness, as an example, is simply the desire to embody the traits we expect to see in biological females on the external and surface level, as well as the societal constructs in relation to femaleness that are not themselves biological. Now, I'm not claiming that there is only one way to look as a woman or one way to act as a woman. Again, I refer back to what I said earlier, but a cluster of concepts, a spectrum of traits meeting a threshold. Now, I also predict that my opponent will argue that under my worldview, we can distinguish between the societal experiences of men and women. This would also be completely absurd because gender norms may differ from culture to culture, but the societal structures and even the rejection of those structures are going to be unique and distinct experiences for the men and women of that society. Here's an example. Let's look at American culture and the concept of the patriarchy. The patriarchy as a system harms both men and women, but in different ways, by projecting and constructing different roles and expectations. A man who shows vulnerability and openly cries is often viewed as weak and less respectable of a man. That man may decide to abide by that expectation, often to his own detriment, or he may choose to reject the societal construct and find acceptance in his own sensitivity. Regardless of what he chooses, the struggle of engaging in that societal construct is specifically an experience of being a man in the society. In contrast, women are expected to be emotional, in fact, over-emotional, and the narrative towards that kind of behavior has been consistently misogynistic, and that struggle will be uniquely that of a woman. Another example, body count. Men are not shamed for having a higher body count the same way that women are. In many cases, they're even celebrated for it. The societal attitudes towards these acts differ for men and women. It should be clear that none of that has anything to do with biology. We're all aware of these societal attitudes. They're projected onto biology, but they're not themselves biological. How much time do I got?
40 seconds.
Okay, my last statement for my opening section is this. For my opponent to be successful, he's going to have to show a contradiction in anything I've said so far. My claim is that he won't be able to, because no such contradiction exists. And I'll leave it there.
Okay. Thank you, Ceasetoknow, for your candor. With that, we're going to move on to Mendoza's opening statement. You're going to get 8 minutes on the clock, and I can start it whenever you say your first word. Oh, Mendoza, you ready to go?
Sorry, bro, I was on mute. Hey, first of all, thank you for having me host, the judges, and my opponent for joining me here today. I'd like to point out that although what divides us is a difference of perspective, what unites us is a shared esteem and love for open discourse, dialogue, debate, and ultimately the pursuit and discovery of truth, a universal, transcendent truth. Yes, truth must be universal and transcendent lest it cease to be truth with a capital T. It's in light of these universal truths that I believe discourse is not only possible, but necessary for the accurate preservation and presentation of the same. How then is a man justified in grouping together mere opinion, taste, and personal perspective with that which is objective, universal, and unchanging fact? The answer, of course, is that he isn't. This is one of my greatest contentions against the ideas surrounding the trans identity, the trans movement, the trans community, and will serve as a fundamental presupposition throughout my critique of my opponent's view. The subjective and the transient must not be conflated with the factual and the objective. What sense does it make to spend hours, days, years debating an idea that is only in reference to a relativized, transient truth that has no stable basis in a shared reality, in an objective reality that we can all know? None. So when it comes to the resolution of today's debate, are trans identities valid? We are essentially asking if they are based in fact or truth, not pure individual feelings or beliefs with no reference to external to the individuals to whom the feelings belong. Let's dive in. A fact is an objective statement that can be proven true or false through verifiable evidence. In contrast, something like an opinion is a subjective statement that reflects a person's beliefs, feelings, or interpretations and cannot be proven. A trans identity is exactly this. Not fact, but rather an internal belief, feeling, or interpretation about oneself. In the words of the cringy Ben Shapiro, facts don't care about your feelings. Yes, he's cringe, but he's cheekily stating that facts are categorically distinct from feelings in their epistemic value and should be avoided when considering matters of truth and fact. If this is the case, then trans identities, which are subjective truths, cannot possibly be valid logically or scientifically. Usually at this juncture, my opponent tries to rescue themselves out of this conundrum by claiming that gender is a social construct. Can I get the time, please? Let's define it.
Yeah, you got 5 minutes.
A social construct, by definition, is a concept, idea, or category that is created, defined, and maintained through collective human agreement, beliefs, and social practices within a specific culture or society. Now, this is pretty on point with how Cease opened, stating that definitions are not objectively true, but just rather subjective. Therefore, it's not inherently natural or universal, but it exists because people agree to assign some kind of meaning or significance to it. Essentially, and I predicted this correctly, as C stated in his opening, that it's just a projection, right? It's an illusory projection of our creative imaginations, right? But hold on. What do our mental social constructs have to do with validity of logic and fact, right? Well, they don't. These two, right, are in dialectical opposition, in my opinion. If man or woman, then, is a type of social construct, and by definition, social constructs are truths that are not universal, then gender has no basis in objective universal truth, but rather subjective internal mind states that can never be evidenced or demonstrated beyond a simple, trust me, bro. Logically, it follows that if there is no way to verify someone's internal sense of self, it cannot be said to be fact or valid. The issue then becomes a matter of whether we choose to believe them or not, right? And that's called faith. And I'd wager that faith is a really icky word in my opponent's eyes, because faith is opposed to logic and reason, and thus not valid. So Cease, do you have any evidence, or do you have faith? Right? Just some individualized intuition that someone like Lily Tino is or isn't trans? Save that answer for us, okay? Having shown the opposition between faith and fact, I wanted to end by positively stating my position as to what a male can never, as to what a male is and why it can never be, right, a woman. Men and women are the categorization, linguistically, of two types of human beings. Yes, an anisogamous, gonochoric, sexually reproducing species, Homo sapiens, comes in two varieties, male and female. And that's not that's not an ancient religious text telling us that, but rather modern science and academia. Douglas J. Fujima and Mark Kirkpatrick in Evolution, 4th edition, 2017, says, male and female are defined by the type of gamete they produce. Males make many small gametes, females make lower. In Evolutionary Analysis by Heron, it says, in anisogamous species, females produce the larger gametes and males produce the smaller gametes. In Evolutionary Parasitology, Schmid-Hempel says, the distinction between males and females is strictly gametic. The sex producing the larger gamete is female. The smaller gamete is male. If then my concept of a woman is defined as an adult human female and female has a scientific, reliable criteria by which to determine it, then it must be considered valid. Yet my opponent rejects this definition. Can I get a time? He must reject this definition. How else could he accommodate himself and others into gender categories they do not by nature belong to? He can't. Okay. Can you say it out loud, please?
1 minute, 30 seconds.
Thus, the T proponent has to attempt, right, like my opponent, to redefine clearly established and demonstrable scientific criteria, violate basic common sense, and invoke faith, mind you, in order to have any sort of epistemic certainty whether T identities are valid or not. This forfeiture of the biological distinctions between men and women also necessitates a new criteria from which we can consistently determine and distinguish men from women, which from Cease's worldview is a feat nothing short of impossible. And I'm going to demonstrate that my opponent will fail at every juncture to demonstrate how T identities are based, once again, in logical coherence and scientific fact. I look forward to engaging and defending my position and deconstructing his view, as well as sharing my own. And to be very clear, having said all this, my contention with the T community and my opponents and his counterparts is not against their dignity, their value, and their worth as human beings, but rather against their ideas. This isn't an attack on the value of my opponents as persons, right, and their deservingness of respect and love, but rather on the prism through which they view the world. Thus, my aim here is to hold one another to account and invite them into a coherent relationships with themselves, the world, and the truth.
Okay. Are you concluding there?
Yes, sir.
With that, you had 8 seconds on the clock. Thank you both for your candor and your opening statements. So now we're going to proceed to the first round of cross-examination. Cease, you're going to get 8 minutes on the clock to ask questions to delegitimize who disses position, but also build up your position. At any time, if who dis gets out of control, you can say, I reclaim my time. I'll pause the timer. We'll get him under control, and then we'll resume the timer. Same thing applies to who dis during his cross-examination. So,
Okay, I will address what Huda said in response to my opening in my closing statement, because I would say that he didn't actually address any.
You
of
only
the
ask questions during this segment.
Right. That's what I said. I'll do it in the closing, and for now, I'll just ask the questions I had.
or here, hold on. Actually, you can ask him questions. You can talk the entire time, but it's suggested that you should ask questions.
Yeah, I'll wait to in my closing. I'll respond to what he said in the opening because he was confused. But okay, here's my first. I have a few questions, so I don't want to get too stuck on each one. But I just want a clear answer to some of these. So Mendoza, in your worldview, how would you be able to determine who is a man and who is a woman when you step outside into the world, when you don't have access to chromosomes and gametes and biology?
Well, we know that phenotypic sex, right, follows genotypic sex most of the time, right? Except in cases of disorders of sexual development, right? So knowing that there's two different types of human beings, because humans, once again, are anisogynous and sexually reproducing species, right? We know we only have two options, right? Male or female. Right? That's how I'm defining, right? That's the criteria that I use to determine man or woman. Okay.
Well, I understand.
In the human species, at least.
Well, I understand that that's how you're defining it. What I'm saying is that when you walk outside, you only have access to what people look like on the surface. That's not the same thing as their gametes and chromosomes. That's why I'm trying to understand.
So yeah, look. So the same criteria that you use to determine that someone is a trans woman, right? You're looking for some kind of external traits or characteristics, right? You're just saying that as long as a male tries to adopt those or wear those traits, he's a woman. But we're just saying that these traits actually come inherent to one type of human being.
Right.
And it's not males, by the way.
I don't think that answers the concern I have, but let's try a different question.
Yeah, so I made my distinction in my opening, lest you were not paying attention.
No, I was paying attention.
It's male and female, right? Man and women is in reference to male and female.
No, I get that.
And those are in reference to the gamete production.
No, I understand that. Question number 2. Could you name a single gender theorist that you've read in let's say, the last 5 years?
A what?
A single gender theorist that you've read in the last 5 years?
No, I don't have to read gender theorists to know the type of, let's say, beliefs that they espouse, because the public has made them clear, right? Like yourself.
Right. So I'll ask another question then. So you believe that definitions and concepts require necessary conditions, right?
Definitions and concepts?
Yeah, require like necessary conditions. So there's like a necessary condition to what it means to be a woman or a man, etc.
Well, I will agree that definitions have to be concise. They have to be not too broad, not too narrow. They have to avoid circularity. So if you're asking me if there's ways to properly like define something, I think we can, we can objectively distinguish between two types of things in the world.
Yeah, but I'm asking, are those types of things that have necessary conditions?
Sure.
Okay, so if I ask you, what is a pile of sand? You know what I mean, right?
Yeah, I know what I think it's an amalgamation of individual units of sand, but we're not a human being in a biological organism is not analogous to a pile of sand.
So if I ask you what a mountain of sand is, do you understand what I'm saying?
A mountain
of sand, in contrast to a pile.
You'd be assuming it's a mound that's
it's a yes or it's just a yes or no
large
question.
mound.
It's
Large
just a-
mound, right?
So what is the necessary trait required for a pile of sand to become a mountain of sand?
I have no idea. I guess it's your subjective interpretation of it.
Right. The reason why I'm asking these questions is to show that actually when we categorize the world, necessary conditions are not required.
Right.
Never changing conditions are not required.
Is a pile of sand? Sorry, it's not my turn to ask questions. My bad.
So let me ask a different question. Is the
Yes, sir.
experience of a woman in China and the experience of a woman in America identical?
It's not identical, but there's gonna be some shared experiences based on their biological function.
So, okay, interesting. So you're saying that they're not identical?
No,
Did I
no,
hear
no
that?
single person's experience is ever identical. Cease. Did you know? You didn't know that?
No, I know that. I
Okay,
want to
so
make sure that
so
I
why are
heard
you
that.
asking a question that you already know the answer to, bro?
No, well, I'm trying to see if your view is consistent, and
Okay.
so if you're defining woman as solely a set of biological traits, then I don't know why the experiences of cultures or locations or time periods like China or America would lead to different experiences. It seems like your own definition of woman is contradictory or inconsistent, I should say. Let me ask you a different question.
A female is a female in China as it is in America, right?
Right, but you
Like,
said that their
the
experiences
traits
will be
that
different.
would essentially differentiate them from males are the same no matter where you get in a plane and fly to, right?
Right, but we're talking about the experiences that emerge in cultures while we can still use these
No,
labels
that's not how
to
I'm
talk about.
defining women. So you can't project your definition onto me when your critique of mine didn't work.
No, I was trying to see if you actually use the same type of idea when talking about
Yeah, so a
culture.
woman in the United States, right? For example, my mother, right? What I use to determine that, my mother is indeed a woman is the same thing that I use to determine, if I flew to China, whether
Okay. Let me ask you a different question.
someone's a woman.
So, do you agree, or are you aware that in Christianity, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, you are a Christian, right? That they refer to God as the Father.
Yes, sir.
Do you agree with that way of using language?
Yeah, because gendered is kind of necessitated when you invoke persons, right? Because persons, at least through our limited scope, right, are male or female humans. Right?
So I just need to point out something real quick. I want to let the judges to hear that answer, right? Because what you're saying here is that the word father can be used to describe something that is not biological, because God is not biological.
Yeah, but that's a category error because God is transcendent of any particular, instantiation or categorization of
I agree. It will be a
the natural
category.
world.
I agree. It will be a category.
Yeah, God
Hold on.
is categorically
Well, hold on.
distinct. He transcends all categories. Hold on, so I can explain my view so you can properly attack your brother. So God is transcendent above all created categories like male or female. But when it comes to his revelation, right, in order to meet us where we're at, right, he's revealed as a father.
None of that is
He's
relevant.
He's the generative
Yeah.
principle,
Okay.
right?
Let me
And
ask you. Hold on. None of that is
he's the
relevant to my
generative
concern.
principle, yeah.
So let me ask you a different question. Then I'll return back to that error in my closing.
By the way, this isn't a theological debate.
No, I know that. I was showing how your language is inconsistent. But let me ask you this.
No, it's not.
Hold on. Is Superman a man? And is Wonder Woman a woman?
No, Superman by definition is not a man, even though his name has man in it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to reclaim my time because
Why?
at least 20
Why?
seconds.
Hold on a second. Wait, why are you reclaiming time, dude?
Well, because I'm trying to get to my next
Now you're just
question.
stalling. Come on.
So in the context of Superman being a man and Wonder Woman a woman, clearly there's no confusion in those being the labels that we attribute to those characters. Let me ask you one last question, and then you can. I'll ask you one last question. So the World Health Organization, WPATH organization, the American Medical Association, all agreeing that trans identities are valid. What makes you think that you're more of a credible authority on these issues than the scientific organizations that have, in all the research put together, arrived at the conclusion that they are valid identities? Why do you think that you know better than those associations?
Okay, answer that question, and then we'll move on to the.
So, am I going to get a minute added to my time?
I mean, if you both agree, yeah, we can do that.
Well, I mean, how is you expecting me to answer a question after time is called, like 30 seconds?
It's just finishing up the last thing that was engaged in the cross.
Oh, okay. I guess a little informal. My bad.
And if the same thing was to happen during your cross-examination, I would allow the same thing.
Yeah, that's all good.
But
So what was the question?
Do you, Ceasetoknow, you want to restate the question?
Yeah, my question was, in a context where the World Health Organizations and psychological institutions.
Oh, that's right. Just an appeal to authority. Yeah. So what?
You're calling that an appeal to authority? Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, like if something came out in the scientific textbook that said that black people can be white people now, well, you would have to disagree with the authority, correct?
Okay, we'll stop there. And
Yeah.
then we're gonna go to Mendoza. You're gonna get 8 minutes on the timer for your cross-examination. It starts whenever you say your first word.
Okay. Okay, sir. So, what does trans exactly modify here as what does it mean, the prefix trans, that modifies the noun woman in this case?
Yeah, in this context, it's describing a person, a male that had an incongruence with their biological sex. That was a sign of birth. So it's describing that kind of phenomena of incongruence.
Incongruence. Okay, so what is his identity congruent with?
What do you mean? What is it congruent with? Their identity.
You're saying it's
context-
incongruent with his biological sex, right? So what is it congruent with?
Yeah, the internal schema of woman and female.
Interesting.
So their identity there would be that of a trans woman.
Their identity would be that of a female's, right?
No, their identity would be that of a trans woman. Their internal schema would be referencing this cluster concept of femaleness, as I mentioned in my opener. But I'm not claiming that they would possess the biology of being female. There's a distinction there that I made.
Right. You don't ever believe that you can change your sex, right, Cease?
No, nobody's claiming that. No trans person is claiming that they can change.
So when you say that trans is on the other side of, or this incongruence, right, you're strictly speaking about some internal identity, some internal mental state, correct?
Yeah, I'm speaking about the psychological experience of the biological sex. So yes,
Yeah.
we're talking about.
So when somebody's internal identity is misaligned, right, incongruent, you're saying that their self-perception about themselves is not in alignment with this external presentation, but the external presentation refers to sex, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if there's a misalignment in the gender identity, and the person assumes, right, that their gender identity is informed by their sexual presentation, or rather their biological sex presentation, right?
Wait.
Then isn't that in a way assuming, right, that sex and gender are one?
No. It's saying that the gender identity is the psychological relationship in relation to the sex. Right. So if you have an incongruence with your physiology in that context, right, then that's what it would mean for the person's identity to qualify as trans. Right. It's not saying that they're the same. They're saying that one is the relationship to the other. So it's not synonymous. Again, I covered this in my opener.
Okay. Can a female be a trans woman?
Can a female be a trans woman? Was that what you asked?
Yeah.
No. No, I'm not sorry. I couldn't. You were cutting out on my end. I'm not sorry. No.
Okay. Can a male be a trans man?
No.
Okay. Does sex inform gender?
Yes, it can inform it.
Okay. Is a trans woman a type of sex or a type of gender?
It's a type of gender. Being a trans woman is a gender identity.
So if you're born a male, you can't be trans man, which is a type of gender, correct?
If you're born a male and you're trans, you could be a trans woman. Is that what you're asking?
Is trans man a type of gender category or not?
Yes.
Okay. So if you're born a male, that would exclude you from a gender category called trans man, correct?
If you're born a male, yes.
And it would also exclude you from a gender category called cis woman, correct?
Yes.
So in this case, right, you're using your sex to refer to your gender, which is exactly what we're doing, but you have to reject that in order to accommodate, people that are misaligned with their bodies into people who know themselves, right? That's tough.
No, that doesn't even remotely follow. What we're doing is we're using the context of sex and the context of gender in relation to each other to show where there's an incongruence, where there's an alignment with, right? And the different identities that emerge from that kind of experience. There is no contradiction at all there. I don't know how you're arriving at that conclusion. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, so you're saying that gender does not determine your sex, correct?
Correct.
Okay. But in the case of a male, trying to become a trans man, he would be excluded, right?
No, I'm saying gender is your psychological experience of your biological sex, whether that is an experience of congruence or incongruence. And if it's
So how do you objectively, or at least scientifically, demonstrate what the psychological schema is that aligns with, for example, femaleness? And then how do you know, how do you determine that somebody has it? Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So the field of psychology, you mentioned earlier the sort of pseudo distinction between truths and subjectivity, but that's actually not the
No
case.
distinctions? Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
Wait, so Cease, is the truth subjective, ultimately speaking?
there are things as subjective truths. There are facts that relate to our subjectivity, the nature of our subjectivity. The entire field of psychology is a field that tries to understand
Okay.
and discover what those facts
Yeah.
about our subjective
Gotcha. So
experiences
when you
are.
said in your opening that there's no such thing as a correct definition, right? Wouldn't that assume that there has to be some kind of correct definition to those words you're using, right? Or the concepts that they point to in order to, for that statement to be true?
No, it's pointing out the fact that there is context and there is utility to language, and that as long as we clarify that context and that utility,
So essentially, the
then language gives
definitions
a
of
test.
words, the definitions of the words in the statement, there is no such thing as correct definitions, could ultimately vary and change with time.
Sure, but the point here is that when we agree to the common usage of the term, we understand what we're saying.
Okay. So essentially, that statement, 100, 200, 500, 1,000 years from now could mean something totally different.
Words change over time, and words also have multiple definitions. This is
Does
just a
the
fact of
truth
linguistics.
that the words
It's
point to
simple.
change over time? Yes or no?
I couldn't hear. Say it again.
Does the truth that the words point to, right, change over time? Yes or no?
The concept that's being referred to may change, certainly.
The concepts change.
Sure, concepts, definitions that apply to those concepts, that changes over
Do you think the
time.
laws of logic change?
The laws of logic, there are different kinds of logic. There's not only one
Yeah,
kind.
just the law of identity. Since we're talking about
What about
identities
it?
here. Do you think the law of identity changes? The definition of the law of identity, does that change?
The definition of the law of identity,
Can that change?
can that change? It can. I mean, there are
Really?
laws. Hold on. If by what we meant by law of identity in 100 years meant
That would be a
something else in
violation of the law
different
of identity,
context,
brother.
we will be. Hold on. You asked me a question. Let me answer the question.
Sure.
Right. So, if by the words law of identity, 100 years from now, the concept being expressed was something different, then obviously the meaning would be referring to a different concept. Like, we would just be expressing a different idea. But if you're asking me currently what the law of identity is describing, right, that's just a confusion of terms.
Yeah, so the law of identity, the definition of the law of identity can change, and so can
All
the
definitions can
concept of the
change.
law of identity. Thus, all statements are reduced to pure, relativity. Relativity. That's okay. So, what can you tell us what the threshold is of that meets? What is the threshold? Where is the line drawn where when you have enough cluster concepts to be considered, a woman, or to have the psychosocial schema of a woman?
Sure. So generally speaking, when it comes to psychological perspectives and
Just tell me the traits. I don't need that extra stuff.
well, hold on. You asked me a question. Then again, I reclaim
Tell
my
me the
time.
traits, brother.
Yeah. So you asked me how many traits. Wait, hold on. You asked me two different questions there. What traits or how many traits? Because you asked me how many traits.
Wait, re-ask the question and then Ceasetoknow answer his question.
That's all right. You can move on, or we can continue.
All right, yeah, you guys can finish up that last question. You can re-ask the question and he can answer, or we can just move on.
Okay.
Yeah. So usually in
what's the
psychology,
threshold?
so usually in psychology, the diagnosis is going to require 4 or 5 traits. But I also am not convinced that there is any argument as to why there should be a particular limit. Just because, again, this example that I pointed to earlier, right? Just because there isn't a specific point in which a mound of sand turns into a mountain of sand doesn't mean that we don't understand each concept separately.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay,
So
yeah.
there is no threshold, really.
Oh, I didn't say that. That's not what I said.
Okay, yep, we'll stop it right there. Now we're going to move on to the second round of cross-examination. We're moving on to the second round of cross-examination. Each of you are going to get 5 minutes to cross-examine each other. You're going to get 5 minutes, and Forrest is going to put the 5-minute timer on you, and we'll start whenever you say your first word.
Right. So when you say something like subjectivity does not exist in the context of truth, are you then saying that something like the experience of hunger or the experience of thirst cannot be talked about in a context of truth and the state of affairs?
No, I believe that you can say that it is true that somebody is having a subjective experience called hunger. But to say that hunger, or for example, this subjective truth is shared or the same for all people is a far leap. Okay, you can't equip or at least conflate the categorical distinctions between that which is universal and applicable and binding to all minds and that which is merely held in somebody's individualized self experience.
So wait, are you saying that there is a opposition between the particular subjective experience of hunger and some universally understood concept of hunger in which we can communicate about?
I'm saying that objective truths like 1 + 1 = 2, right, is a truth that is outside of our preferences or opinions, right? Okay. Just the same, there's going to be other biological truth or truth that comport with our reality that are not influenced or determined or able to be changed by the human mind alone. Okay.
But if I say to you, I'm thirsty, even though you're not me and your subjective experience is different from mine, you understand what I mean.
Thirsty has an objective criteria that can't include quenched, right?
Sorry, what is that criteria? Because I'm talking here about the experience.
If I told you that I'm quenched, but in my world that meant thirsty, would you be confused?
No, that's my point. Is that although
you wouldn't if I didn't tell you that quenched meant thirsty in my view?
No, you're making the point for me. What I'm saying to you is that we can describe subjective experiences and still be referencing notions of truth and even share truth in this context.
Yeah. Right, so you're just saying that you can switch the word or the symbol, the linguistic label that we use to apply to an objective, observable, verifiable phenomena. And I'm very happy to concede that point. You can say that, if we collectively agree that women are now called schmiggle booties, right? Well, maybe schmiggle booties is now what refers to the objective, biological, verifiable construct called female.
Well, why are you talking about objective, which would entail mind independence in a context where we're talking about? Let me finish the question.
Even if all human minds disappeared, the natural concept, the biological concept and categorical distinction, in the natural world would still maintain between males and females.
So you're saying that the category of male and female would exist independently of the human mind that are constructed?
Did male and female pre-exist the arrival of the human mind? Yes, it did, right? Thank you.
Right, but that wasn't my question.
So it's not a human mind construct.
Wait, what? Hold on a second. So you're saying, I'm saying that the existence of the biology is dependent on the fact that humans exist. Without humans, those categories wouldn't exist. And the category itself is a construction of the mind. What the mind is describing might exist by the description.
The object, do you get the object, reference distinction?
Yes, but it doesn't seem like you do. So
the object reference distinctions means that the words or the symbols, right?
Hold on.
Things that we ascribe to the object are distinct.
Take a second. This might help clarify. Do you agree that there is a difference between the territory and what the map is describing?
Absolutely. I've already conceded that a bunch of times.
Right. So when we describe subjective experiences, why would you be inferring some objective, mind-independent reality?
Because there are physical truths, right? There are physical, natural truths about the world and how it operates, right? How it functions, how we function as a extension of it, right? That are not decided or described into existence by human minds. We can discover and describe them once they exist, but the very fact that we're describing and discovering them presupposes that they're already present prior to us arriving. We're just slapping sounds, right, and little squiggly marks to the thing in objective, observable reality. So that makes sense, brother?
Not exactly. So I want to make sure that I'm following. So are you saying that therefore in this category of objectivity, subjective experience such as gender identity or such as thirst or hunger would not belong in the space of facts or
That's
truth?
precisely what I'm claiming. Yes, sir.
Gotcha.
Okay, we'll stop right there. With that, that's going to conclude the second round. Ceasetoknow's 5-minute cross-examination. So now we're moving on to the second round, 5-minute cross-examination of Who Dis. You're going to get 5 minutes, and it starts whenever you say your first word.
Okay. Gotcha. Just a second here. Okay. Cease, can I cam up real quick, actually?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
Oh, you want me to start it when you came up?
All right, for sure. Cease, can you fill in the blanks for us right here?
I'm trying to see what it says.
Man and woman.
Okay, what is your question?
Can you fill in the blanks for us right here? Can you give us traits that go on either side, not here in the middle?
Traits that go on either side. So are you asking what distinguishes between a man and a woman?
That's correct, because a man and a woman are two distinct type of things in the world, right?
Right, okay, so this goes back to my opening
Okay,
statement.
great. So give us a trait that belongs here and here, not in here.
Right, so as I said in my original statement, this can be understood in 3 different ways. One is the biology.
In the gender construct, forget the biological distinction.
Hold on.
Give me your gender psychosocial schema definition and criteria that you use to determine between a type of thing you call a woman and the type of thing that you call a man right here.
Yeah, so the psychological schema of femaleness is going to relate back to the female biology, therefore be distinct from the psychological schema of maleness, which is going to be describing...
Not maleness.
Hold on, you asked,
maleness
but
and
I'm saying when I use the
Man
word
and
man
woman,
and woman, my worldview is when you use the word
Okay,
man.
let's try it this way.
I'm going to reclaim my time. I mean, what is it?
Let's try it this way.
I am answering.
Can you define what a woman is, please?
Oh, sorry. So speaking over me as I'm trying to give the answer is not me not answering, right? You're actually keeping me from giving you the answer.
Just to clarify here, the time is under the questioner's control. So if he wants to interrupt you, same way that maybe you weren't aware of that in your first cross-exam there, Steve, but if you want to interrupt him when you're doing the cross-exam, that's fair play, and same way with him.
Well, but
When
how
you
is it
say
a cross-exam if we can't actually answer the question?
Well, the way that the reclaiming of the time works is that if you're the one asking the questions, you can reclaim the time. You see, so you can interrupt your answerer, but
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that when I use the label man, right, in the gender context, I'm saying that they possess the psychological schema referring to maleness. And same thing goes with woman in the context of the psychological schema referring to femaleness. And
what is that? What is that?
What do you mean that? What it is? That is the psychological
what is the psychological contents of somebody who has a male psychosocial schema? What is
yeah,
it? How is it differentiated from that which is female? Or
yes,
woman,
the desire.
right?
Yes, the desire to possess the features that we associate with the female or male biology.
Gotcha. So essentially, it's the desire to possess them. You don't even have to possess them, do you, Cease?
You don't. That's right.
So when you say that you need a cluster concept and you to meet this threshold and you say 4 or 5 parts, you don't actually mean that, bro. You mean one part, and that's the intention or desire to have it, right? That's the sole definitive, if we want to call it that, criteria that you have to determine whether somebody is a man or a woman, correct?
No, that's not true because I provided 3 different categories. That's
yes, it is. Watch this. How do you determine between a masculine-looking woman, right, and a masculine-presenting trans woman?
I don't understand the question. So that, again, is going to depend on the cluster of information provided to us. So some of it may be what they tell us. That may be what their biology is.
So just to be clear then, you don't have a way of filling out any of these...
I just filled it out for you. I gave you a specific answer as to how we do it.
You don't have, no, you haven't given us any single trait, right? Any definitive trait between, or any distinguishing trait rather.
I have.
Between, what is it?
Again, it's a difference in schemas.
You haven't told us what traits constitute schema A versus schema B.
I did. No, I did.
Tell us what constitutes schema man.
So I'll say it again. It's a psychological schema that describes the desire to possess the biological traits of that biological sex.
Okay, let me be very clear. The only thing that goes on either side here is the desire, correct?
No, it's not the only thing.
No.
No, under my world.
So what is the other thing then?
You're asking me specifically
What's
about a
the
schema.
yeah? Give us some more traits, then, bro. Come on.
Yeah, but hold on. You asked me specifically about schemas. If you want to ask me what other categories we use, to
Yeah.
determine
So
the
men
differences,
and
I can
women
do
are
that.
psychological schemas, right?
That's one aspect of the conversation. I gave you three from in my opening. There's another one, which is the experiences they're having within that culture. So that's why I mentioned.
I
That's
got
why I
you.
mentioned
So
the
in our
patriarchy.
culture, how is a woman defined?
Right. So this is why I gave the example earlier of. I mean, you can laugh, but this is the example I gave earlier.
How is a woman defined in our culture?
So this is why I gave you three examples of distinctions between men and women. One was biological, the other one was a gender schema, and the third was the experiences they have in that
A
society.
male is not.
That's why I brought up the example of the patriarchy and how within that patriarchy, men and women have different experiences and expectations and relationships to those expectations that distinguish them in that society. So that's three now examples.
Gotcha.
Of ways
So
to
a woman
distinguish
in the United States means something totally different than to a woman in China, right?
depends on which context you're referring to. On a cultural
In a societal
level,
context.
sure, there may be.
So you don't. So when you fly to China, you turn into something other than a woman because a woman.
I didn't say
according to you,
completely different.
Is
I said
something
there's
that only
gonna be
pertains to
differences.
your society here in the West. Amazing work, bro.
We'll stop there.
That's not a response to what I said.
And
Amazing work.
just to clarify for anybody who might be confused in the comment section, whenever Logic Troll jumped in, it was at 3 minutes and 30 seconds. So I can't do like 3 minutes and 3 seconds on TikTok, so I gave who this 3 minutes, and then I did the 30 seconds on my phone. But given that, so far we've had the 8-minute openers. We've had 2 rounds of cross-examination, one being 8 minutes and one being 5. Now we're going to have 14 minutes of open dialogue. This section does not belong to who dis or Ceasetoknow. You both are sharing it, and this is your time to ask questions to delegitimize your opponent or build up your own argument. So with that, give me 1 sec. Let me see if I can do it on the TikTok timer. I think I can. It's going to start whenever you say your first word. Timer is going to be on C's.
Yeah, so I want to go back to what we were saying earlier, right? Because when I asked you how you determine when you go into society what distinguishes a man and a woman, you start talking about things that we don't have access to when we go out into society. You start talking about external features that may associate with biology, but are not necessarily biological realities, right? And so you're essentially what you're telling us is that you don't have a tool to actually distinguish between men and women under your worldview. Well, is this going back and forth? Why am I?
Yes, you're muted.
Sorry, this is a biological reality that you yourself believe in and reinforce because you yourself are referring to biological concepts called male and female in order to know or reference what a woman or man is, correct?
Yeah, I'm not denying that there is a part
great.
in which I'm not denying that there is a biological reality. I'm also saying that we're using these words to describe things that are not just biological. And if we were to use the word to only mean biology, then you wouldn't be able to tell a woman or man apart because you don't have access to biology when you enter the world.
No, bro, that's actually my critique against you. That's the whole point, right? It's that when you forfeit the biological distinction between men and women, as we traditionally know it being, obviously male or female, then you necessitate a new criteria that you use to determine between the two types of thing that you call man and woman. But when I ask you that, it's just in reference to male or female again. Okay, but which one is it, bro? You can't have one foot in, one foot out.
This is a straw man. What I've provided is the fact that we can use words and labels to describe different concepts, right? And so I'm not removing.
Fine,
no, hold on. I'm not removing. I'm not removing the definition
like,
of female.
Mujer is a different word than woman, but it refers to the same biological concept.
No, again, historically, the word woman has not been used to only
It
describe
came
biology.
from with man, which is in reference to the wife of a man, which is always the female, correct?
So again, this is just
That's
a
from Oxford
confusion of
Dictionary, dude. You need me to pull it up.
so again, you will find definitions of gender and woman that relate to gender identity
think
that
Oxford
distinct from
Dictionary
biological
is
sex. Yeah. So again, the dictionaries will also have definitions referencing the gender identity as distinct from sex. I mean, I can give examples of this, but again, you're not actually addressing, you're evading the question. you don't have access to people's biology when you enter the world, right? And so to just say it's biological, you don't know what
yeah, we
somebody's
do
biology
because
is when you see them.
yes, we do, because as a sexually reproducing anisogamous gonochoric species, that manifests the internal, right, microscopic genetic information has a external, right, corollary, correct?
Not necessarily.
Yeah, phenotypically, males and females, right? It's not necessary, but just typically, I said.
Right, but that's exactly
Yeah,
the
yeah. So
point.
what? So for example, I'll give you an example not related to humans, right? So a rooster has a little crest, right? And usually they have talons, correct? So if a rooster is born without his crest, does he cease to be a male chicken?
Right. Well, what I'm saying to you is that your label there is leaving room for people who don't fit that criteria and that particular trait to still be within the category, which is my point, right? That when we're looking at people in the world, we don't have access to their chromosomes, we don't have access to their biology or their gametes.
Yeah.
We have phenotypes, right?
No.
But those
Can you
phenotypes are
prove-
external; they're not necessarily biological.
Let me ask you: is there a biological criteria that is shared and universal to categorize between male and female, right? In biological organisms, yes or no, Cease?
I think
I just need you to answer that question: yes or no?
say it again. Ask the
Is
question again.
there a shared universal, right, criteria by which we can categorize between the two types of sexually reproducing biological organisms, male and female? Yes or no?
Yeah. Well, I think sex to be bimodal. So
Yeah, it's a binary, right?
no, it's a bimodal.
No. Well, I'm sorry. Well, the sources that I read out to you would disagree.
Yeah, I would say that it's the consensus in biology that the distribution of those types of those traits is on a bimodal distribution.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
that is a criteria, if that's what you mean.
Yeah, you're just saying that sometimes there's deviations from these norms and things like we consider like disorders of sexual development, right?
Yeah, I'm saying that this
Yeah.
category.
Okay. Do you know what sex a person with complete androgen sensitivity is?
What's that? What sex would they be?
You don't know?
No, I'm asking you.
Yeah, they're male, although they sometimes present with a phenotypic sex. Okay. But
Yeah, that's
once
consistent with
again,
what I'm
how do we know that? How do we categorize such ambiguity, right? When it's not so clear. Once again, we're referring to their gamete production, right?
No,
It's
this
in
is
reference to these
precisely my
other
point.
biological determinants.
Well, sorry, you're making the point for me. You're recognizing that there are these ambiguities within
No,
the
sir.
biological categories, and so what we do is we.
There's not ambiguity. There's exceptions to very clear and well-defined distinctions.
If there are exceptions, right, then it isn't.
Sorry,
a necessary
let
condition.
me retract
If
that.
there are
There's not-
exceptions,
there's
if there are exceptions,
deviations.
hold on. If there are exceptions, then when we categorize people, right, it's not in a context where we are describing necessary conditions, but rather we're describing spectrums of traits, right? And what I'm saying is
There's
that
no spectrum of traits, dude.
you just agree that there is when you acknowledge that there are exceptions.
No, there are clearly defined traits that belong to one or the other, and sometimes in sexual development, there's deviations from that. norm.
By saying deviation, you are recognizing a spectrum of potential
No, I'm not,
appearances.
dude. It's
You
it's
don't know what a spectrum
binary.
is.
It's either or. Let me ask you this: do you think there's a third sex?
Well, intersex could be viewed as a third sex.
No,
And
it's
so-
not, dude. That's scientifically false and illiterate.
No,
No serious scientist, give me a source that says intersex is the third sex. I will wait.
again, I don't have any.
No, give me a sex that says intersex can be a third sex.
So
Source.
again, what I'm saying to you is that when we categorize intersex as male or female, that to some degree is arbitrary, right? But hold on, let me just clarify one thing. Even if there were only two sexes, that's compatible with my worldview. Even if that was the case, it would not be relevant.
Yeah, I know, because you think gender and
because
sex are the
gender
same
is
thing.
a
We know
relation
that, dude.
towards those sexes. So even in a world where there's only two sexes, that does nothing to prove your point or to show that gender identity is in some way irrational or not valid.
Yeah,
Like, you
it
just
at least
confuse
shows
the
this.
get-go.
I'll tell you what it does show. That there are, when it comes to the types of human beings that are on this planet, there are two types, right? Males and females, right? That so much it shows, correct?
Sure, it's irrelevant to the conversation.
Okay, great. So if my definition of woman is in reference to this two, right, this binary distinction, right? Then what is the issue here?
The issue is that your definition of woman
when
doesn't have to be
the
right.
criteria to determine male and female is very well established and defined. Why do you have to forfeit that and then say, oh, actually, woman is this other thing? But when I ask you, you obfuscate and dress it up in these word salads that ultimately string you into a loop,
this is a
put you on the
complete
rhetorical carousel
This
and
is a
don't
complete
actually
straw
take
man.
you anywhere.
You not addressing the actual view is not you proving your point, right? So first of all, I don't have to abide. I've already shown why your definition of woman, only in the biological sense, leaves you unable to actually categorize men and women when going into society because you don't have access to their biology. So your definition of woman is actually not helpful.
Neither do you, dude.
My definition of woman.
How do you have
more than
access
just-
to their
my
internal
definition of
intentions
woman,
and desires?
My definition of woman.
No, how
has
do you
more than
access
just-
somebody's internal intentions and desires?
You don't have to have access to it. You can simply.
What the fuck do you mean? You're asking. Sorry for the language. You're demanding. You're telling me that I can't claim that someone is a man or a woman because I don't have access to any epistemic method, any kind of methodology to actually, demonstrate that with certainty.
No, no.
When I ask you, what do you use?
No.
You don't have to. That's
No,
fair.
you're confused as to what I'm saying.
You just have a self-report, right?
You're confused as to what I'm saying. What I'm telling you is that historically, when we have used the words, the labels, men and woman, it's been used not only to describe some biological set of facts, but also to describe cultural, societal, psychological realities. And by the way, every field of academia agrees with me, not you. Okay, philosophy has used the word gender in relation to, but contrast with biological sex. History has used the word gender in relation to, but in contrast with biological sex.
I mean in relation, but in contrast to. What does that even mean?
What I said earlier, that gender is one's psychological relationship to one's biological sex, and also the societal constructs that are projected onto that biological sex, but are not themselves biological. This is the understanding
amazing.
and the consensus.
So you're saying that
in every field of academia, and you think that you can come along and say, or in the facts of the feelings.
Hold on a second. Your position is that a male can be a woman on the base. Yeah, go ahead.
It's funny. It's ironic to me that the facts over feelings crowd then wants to come along and say, here's all these academic fields in which have used these words in the same way that I'm describing, but they're all wrong, right? Let's throw out psychology, let's throw out anthropology, let's throw out philosophy, all because you don't like a particular definition.
The point, Cease, is that when we're talking about definitions, right, we're agreeing that a good definition has certain qualities, right? Like clarity, for example, right? Sure. It's precise and avoids vague or ambiguous terms. I'll give you an example, right? A bad definition would be like a circle is something round, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. What's a more precise definition? Okay. A better definition is a circle is a set of all points in a plane equidistant from a given point. That's much more precise. That narrows it down, right?
Would you agree
overly narrow that it excludes, right, circles?
Hold on. Would you agree that a better
hold on,
definition...
brother. I'm almost there. So,
well, hold on. This relates to what you're saying. Mm-hmm. Would you agree that a better definition is one that is, I would say, congruent or in usage with the common usage of those terms, right? So if most people have used the word woman in a cultural context, then there is utility, including in the definition, the cultural concept.
Got you. So the utility would only be present insofar as what is being referred to with the word, right? The concept that being referred to is the same for all people. But from your view, the word woman or man takes on a new definition with each person that you ask, correct? Because it's always in reference to somebody's internal sense of self or their desire to be in accordance with some kind of male or female trait.
Argument?
So the argument is this. The argument is this. If ultimately, right, gender is an internal sense of self, right? Some kind of self-determination, some kind of self-report. And people's internal sense of self is never consistent, is never shared amongst across individuals, right? It's always in constant flux. No individual has the same internal experience. then if the thing, right, if the object that the word woman refers to is a thing that's in constant flux and change, then it loses its utility,
Nobody
because when
said
I
that.
say woman from you, it could mean a guy with a dick. That's crazy.
For you to show that trans identities are invalid, you would actually have to deal with the actual worldview rather than a straw man of it, which is what you've been
It's not a
doing
straw
right now.
man, bro. Like
You've
whenever
entirely
you don't have
straw man what I
anything
said.
to like retort with, you just
No,
cry
no.
straw
Well,
man.
I am. I'm pointing out, and I want the judge to hear this, that what you're doing is straw manning my position. What I'm saying to you is
You
something
can
that
say that, but you gotta tell
has
me
echoes.
I'm strawmanning. What did I say about your position that doesn't accurately represent what you believe about the concepts of man and woman? Tell me.
Yeah, you're
Wait,
claiming.
hold on. Pause right here. Do we have an echo? Do we have
Yeah, somebody here.
All right, we can. We'll start the timer at like 1 minute. Let's fix the echo.
Where's the echo coming from?
I don't know. Okay, how about everybody? Actually, who dis?
Might be me.
Hey, testing. No, it's not who did. Oh wait. Oh, it is actually. Yeah. I think it is.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Is it good now?
Okay, are we adding back to the timer?
Yeah.
Okay, let's continue like that.
Okay, so I'm still here, a bit of an echo. But...
Okay, go ahead.
Right, so it's a straw man because you're saying in your speech there that the subjective experience of incongruence and identity is always in flux and has no capacity to be understood in some scientific and universal way. Again, every field of science or scientific organization disagrees with you. We can absolutely understand the experience of being trans, although it's subjective. The entire point here is that there's a nature to our subjectivity, and one in which we can understand the nature of through the tools of science and psychology and all these different things. So
No. I reject that. There's no scientific way to prove your internal desires or intentions.
So again, when we
is there not a way to scientifically demonstrate your desires or intentions? Cease.
Yeah, in the sense of psychology, absolutely. That's why we do.
And how do they do that? Just
right,
believing what the person says.
So we do that. We do that by doing interviews with and therapy sessions with people that struggle with these experiences.
How do you know they're not lying to you?
We ask their experiences, right? You just assuming they're lying isn't an argument.
How do you know they're not lying to you?
You assuming they're lying isn't an argument to invalidate that experience.
I have a few more questions for Cease. I'd like to.
Stop right there. We got to stop right there.
Okay.
So with that concludes the 14 open dialogue section. So now we're going to move to conclusions. Both of you are going to get a 5-minute closing statement. You go first, and I'll start your timer whenever you say your first word.
Sure. So, in summary, I think I've proven my case here. Trans identities are absolutely valid, and nothing incoherent is being expressed. And those who claim otherwise are simply confused about linguistics and history. Doing a straw man of the views and ignoring the way in which language and linguistics functions in the world is not a point in his favor. He's just confused as to how words can be applied in describing these identities. I believe tonight my opponent made the exact same mistakes I predicted he would. Regardless of the mental and linguistic gymnastics he attempted, he clearly has failed to make his case. I do want to return to this idea of cluster concepts for a minute. Just so everybody's aware, cluster concepts are widely used in data analysis and computer science to group similar data points, objects, and computing resources together. In philosophy, a cluster concept points to the fact that categories are not defined by a single necessary and sufficient condition, but rather a collection of overlapping and weighted criteria or cluster properties. This was pioneered by Ludwig Wittgenstein through the example of games and a concept of family resemblance. And so when Mendoza is asking for necessary conditions, right, as though the only way to categorize is to use necessary conditions, he's simply not even addressing the worldview. He's debating a different position. I want to go back to what I was saying earlier. And I was accused of an appeal to authority, but an appeal to authority is referencing an authority that doesn't actually have the expertise to talk about what they're talking about. When I'm referencing the World Health Organization, the WPATH organization, the American Medical Association, the APA, which is the American Psychological Association, and the AAP, which is the American Academy of Pediatrics, and they all agree with me, right, that trans identities are valid, and they agree with me because of a number of correlations, some being between brain structures and gender identity, some being the psychological data compiled from interviewing and providing therapy for thousands of transgender people, to the empirical data of the effectiveness of gender-affirming care, all justifying gender identity as a valid, scientifically understood identity. All that doesn't disappear because Mendoza doesn't like the science, right? Sociologists and anthropologists like Margaret Mead and Ruth Benedict, and later on Robert Stoller, are noted for their early contributions to separating sex and gender in the anthropological context. A philosopher like Simone de Beauvoir wrote about the idea of gender as separate from biology for centuries. Historians like Gail Betterman is also known to talk about the distinction between sex and gender throughout history in different cultures, right? Point here being that all throughout history, people have used the word woman, used the word man, used the idea of gender in relation to biological sex, but not synonymous with biological sex. So the only ones here that are not caught up with the facts of the matter and who reject the supported academic work in multiple fields of study are gender critical and religious conservatives, like my opponent here tonight. I think I did a perfectly fine job of showing the inconsistency within his definition. I pointed to the fact that we can talk about being a woman in different cultures, and he knows exactly what I mean when I talk about the experience of a woman in China as opposed to the experience of a woman in America. That's not biological. Even if you want to say they're both females, I just begging the question, right? I also showed that religious people in cultures use the word father, right, to describe their God, right? That word generally means something biological, right? But in this context, it's being used to describe something that lacks biology because God is a metaphysical entity. Right now, Mendoza being religious, he knows what that's like to use the language that way, and that him special pleading to God somehow emerging outside of the categories is just missing the point. That he's actually making the point for me, that he actually agrees that language can be used in different contexts, and there's no contradiction in a worldview which describes women in a biological context as females, in a psychological context as possessing the psychological schema of femaleness, in a cultural context as having to do with the particular gender roles, expressions, norms, and experiences of those societies that are particular to men and women of that society. So I've provided the distinctions here, and it's just been ignored and strawman the entire time. And I hope the judges pay attention to the fact that he actually hasn't addressed my position. He's just talked over it.
Okay, and with that, that will conclude your 5-minute closing statement. Thank you for your candor. Who dis? Now you're going to get 5 minutes, and that 5 minutes can start when you say your first word.
Yeah, so I'd just like to address a couple claims to start. He said that I was confused about linguistics and history when here, Oxford Dictionary, the entry for woman is an Old English etymological source that sounded like with man, which meant female human being. So by his very own point or critique that I didn't know history, I'm glad you called that out, because it actually works against you, dude. It literally means a woman, a female human being, with man. Also to do with the wife of a man, right? Man is in reference to the human category, and then with man refers to the type A of female, or the type of human, right, in that category. So, look, at the end of the day, Cease can say all these things about how I didn't do this and I didn't do that, but we saw here that not only does he not have his facts straight, we also saw that, according to him, the cluster concepts are not definitive traits, right? There's no definitive traits that make up a cluster concept. There's no definitive threshold that would actually put you across the line or in one camp or another, right? At the end of the day, what we have is a spirit of chaos and confusion. There's a rejection of the biological order for whatever reason to satisfy some kind of internal feeling. And all I'm claiming here is, guys, that the feelings that you have about yourself are not actually in congruence or in alignment with objective reality. And that's by your very own admission, right? You guys are in incongruence. And I think one of the worst things that you can do to somebody who has a dysphoric or dysmorphic view about themselves is to affirm their dysphoria and dysmorphia. That's like if I went and told my buddy that I can barely fit through the door because he's so huge, when he tells me that he's scrawny, for example, I go, yeah, you're totally scrawny, bro. Keep doing what you got to do. Keep taking up those. When I know that objective biological reality doesn't reflect his internal sense of self. So we shouldn't be aiming to further split the rift between people's perception of themselves, right, and their actual body that they were born with. We should be looking to ameliorate, right, the schism, right, and the chasm between who people think they are and what their biological, ontology actually dictates for them. There are certain things that are immutable, call them social constructs or not. A white person cannot be a black person. A 13-year-old cannot be a 65-year-old, right? And a man cannot be a woman, okay? When we start to deviate and divulge into pure subjectivity and trying to apply mental fictions and subjective relativized truths across the board as if they are gospel, as if they are truth, as if they are written in stone, not only are we going to divulge into just complete unintelligibility, but I don't see the human race existing too much longer if we continue on the way we're at. We need some semblance of order, some semblance of a true north, some semblance of objectivity by which we can orient our lives, right, and our minds around. And when you start to reject at least very clear and observable, definable phenomena like male and female as the definitive trait that defines men and women, and you start to include males into female spaces, which by objective evidence, right, cause more harm, right, cause damage, right, cause conflict amongst the sexes here. So I wanna end by saying and reminding you guys that I don't hate you as much as you'd like to believe that, so that it's easier for you to cope with what I'm saying. I don't hate you. I want you to come to the truth. I want you to accept yourself, to love yourself for who you are, and stop chasing these mental phantasms that will never actually be in accordance with objective reality. Okay, we all value the truth, right? We all need the truth, and we should all orient our lives around said truth. God bless you guys, and thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, thank you for your candor. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, audience and judges, that's going to be the conclusion of Cocomania 3, A Clash Over Identity. Ceasetoknow versus who on trans identities are valid. That judges, now would be the time to collect your scores, go over your notes, and we will be listening to your judgments in a few seconds. But how are we going to do this, guys? Audience vote.
Of scores?
Are you guys ready? And
I'm going last.
Wait, let's get to 300.
Is there a scorecard I didn't get?
No, you can judge it however you want to, but typically,
you guys for all the gifts.
Typically focus on rhetoric, content, persuasiveness, accuracy when it comes to facts or sources mentioned, those types of things. I'll get the poll started.
Yeah. By the way, Cease didn't mention a single source, just to remind.
That's not true. I mentioned actually 4. I mentioned a number of anthropologists.
The judges
I mentioned
People, if anything, people are calling him out for appealing to authority because he listed so many.
No. Appealing to a body or institution is not the same as providing an actual
I mentioned
citation or
about
source.
I mentioned about 5 different individuals in multiple fields of studies, all who
Yeah,
point to the
yeah,
fact that
you
we can
did.
use these
You
words.
mentioned them, but you didn't provide an actual citation that we
You
can
guys,
go and
if you guys
search
keep
whether or
talking,
not what you said was actually
I'm
true.
gonna judge you based on what you're saying now, rather than if you guys keep talking, I'm gonna keep judging you, unless you want me to stop judging.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Like, I actually put a lot of thought and effort into this judging. So if you keep talking, I'm just gonna keep judging what you're saying. If you want to keep going, I would actually I would even advocate for a little bit of bonus time, or perhaps like a challenge to each of you to steel man each other's view if Coke would
Oh,
be open to that.
I would like that. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I could do that
Yeah,
easily.
Yeah, Coco. I've been suggesting that for multiple
but
days, Coco.
but only if you guys need to decide as the contestants here if you'd rather that not be judged or if you want that to be part of the judge. For me personally, I strongly think that should be part of it, but because I think you guys have a chance here to show your stuff, but it's your call.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah. We can give each person 5 minutes to steelman the
long.
opposition's.
That's very long. Yeah.
That's too long.
Okay, we could do 3
Let's
minutes.
just do 2 minutes real quick.
I think
still
3 is
man each
good.
other's arguments in 2 minutes.
Okay, so
Two. I think two, but whatever.
okay, yeah. So Ceasetoknow, you'll get 2 minutes to steelman Whodis's argument for the debate that we just had, and then Whodis will do the same thing. Judges, during this time, you can, I guess maybe you're judging this part, or maybe you're calculating your votes. Either one is fine.
I really hold this as a huge part of it, and yeah, like I said, I'd like to see a little more because you guys are doing such a great job, and I need to alleviate my own bias as much as I possibly can. So this will help me. Yeah, so I'm gonna try. I'm gonna judge it if you guys don't mind.
So the question is to steelman the other person's position.
Yeah, like tell us what you got from the other person's position.
Yeah, sure. So my understanding is that his claim is that if we use the word woman to not only mean biological female, this somehow will lead to incoherence or inability to communicate accurately, right? That the only way in which to make sense of these categories is solely through a biological lens. He also claimed that the gender from the other side is just a social construct, which I disagreed with, but that was his view. Essentially, he's saying that experiences are not enough to talk about truth. The truth only belongs to an objective space, independent of opinions, feelings, experiences, cultures. So to talk about the subjective experience of trans people is somehow to not be talking about anything that could be considered truth, and therefore that would make it not valid in his view. That's what I took him to be saying. That essentially my view is incoherent. Yeah.
I'd be very interested to hear, not that I'm going to judge this, but I would be interested to hear how you would rate his. Did you agree, just give maybe a 1 out of 10? Do you feel like he did a good job of steel manning or a poor job?
Wait, Steve, do you have anything more to say? Or no?
Is that it?
Sorry, Steve, did. I thought you were done. I'm sorry.
No, I'm trying to think if there's anything
Like,
else
what's
to
his
say.
definition? What's his definition?
Yeah, I mean, his definition of woman would be an adult human female. His definition of man would be an adult human male. And therefore, because he thinks that gender and sex are identical, and there is no context in his worldview where the trans identity would make sense, because according to him, it would be some sort of rejection of biological facts, right? Because there's only 2 categories, male and female. That's what he's essentially claiming, that gender and sex are identical there.
Okay. Go on, logical.
Can I?
Wants to give a rating of how he felt about that?
I
That would give it a little.
I don't know if I can clarify that last part. Won't be too long.
Go for it. While we're finishing up his
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
and then we'll get to your
What
reflection.
I mentioned about when you forfeit the biological distinction, I'm saying that's the only consistent, shared, and universal way of properly categorizing between the 2 types of human beings. So when you say, no, that's not what categorizes or distinguishes between them, you're necessitating another criteria which you didn't provide for us. But, okay, that's
All
it.
right. Who this, you'll get your time to basically summarize Ceasetoknow's position.
Yeah, so from my understanding, right, Cease holds a position that when it comes to words and language, right, these things are in kind of constant flux and change. By his very own statement in his opening, right, he said that there is no one true correct definition of a word or of words in general. Okay, so essentially, Cease is, appealing to this new, this redefinition of what woman has traditionally meant, and he's relating woman now, instead of to the biological distinctions. He's referencing social, psychological, right, and according to him, biological traits as well. But the problem is that, I'm not giving a critique. And so it's based on these constantly, interchangeable traits. As long as they're held in some kind of cluster, that will send you over some kind of threshold that places you in one camp over another. At the same time, though, Cease rejects that there is a certain threshold. And that's not a critique, that's me stating his position. He said that there is no threshold, and that the 4 or 5 traits that scientists use are not definitive. He doesn't believe in definitive traits or essential traits of things, and thus that's why it's possible for a male to accommodate himself or impose himself into the category of woman. Yeah, I mean, he thinks that trans identities are valid, in the sense that there's a body of professionals that state it so, and on the basis, again, of this redefinition.
Okay, Ceasetoknow, what do you think about that summary of your position?
Much of that was a straw man. I mean, I didn't reject thresholds. I didn't say that there was no ways
It's
to
recorded, bro.
completely
It's recorded. And you
distinguish.
said, when I asked you about threshold, you said, right, but not even that is necessary, right? Not even the 4 or 5 are necessary, right?
I'm answering the host's question. So I also provided the necessary categories that would make sense when using the label woman, right? And so I provided multiple ways to distinguish between men and women. And so I never said that there was no concrete way of doing this. So it just, I feel like most of that was a straw man, but I'll leave it there.
Okay, with that, we are now going to move on to the judges' scores and votes. So any judge can go first. We're now moving on to...
I'm having a nervous breakdown over here. You guys did so well. Like, I literally am, every moment I thought I knew someone was pulling ahead, someone else made up for it right away. And it's humbling to, I guess I'm just going to be, at this point, basically exposing a bit of my own bias, because this was just really hard to judge.
You okay there, Logic Troll?
I left the app to look at my notes, and I guess you guys can't hear me when I do that, so this is going to be a little tricky. I'm going to try to do it by memory. I had in the intro, Steve's definitely pulling ahead in the intro. I was I was very confused personally. This is, I guess, again, maybe a bit of my own bias about how the universal concept and the objective definitions work into your argument, who dis. But then later down the road, right, I think maybe in the cross-examination you did make it a little more clear how you're utilizing the universals. Again, I don't leverage that. I don't agree with that as much, and I found it a little confusing. But everywhere else, as soon as the first cross-examination on who dis's side came, he laid it out. I gave him 5 stars out of 5 on that first cross-examination. I felt that you did so well putting Cease's feet to the fire, bringing up, I don't know if it happened at the first or the second cross-examination, but the point about conceding about the law of identity, And whether or not conceding necessarily, but the tension around the law of identity and how flexible terms truly are, or whether there is going to be some standard. I would have loved, and I did give some points here to who dis near the end. I would have loved for you guys to go a little bit more into validity, what validity is. I think that was brushed over a little slightly. It came out in the substance of the argument, but I do think if there was a round 2 here, which I would totally advocate for because I love this topic and you guys were great representatives of both sides, I would love to hear you guys debate about like what validity is. Because to a certain point, I got to the same steel man position as who dis here about the threshold and whether or not Cease was conceding there is a threshold or whether and like I'm not trying to steel man you Cease, genuinely. I heard you say that there was a threshold. It's just identifying it becomes tricky, and then so on and on I could go. Like Steve's bringing up the use of stepfather, I thought was a very good example of how a father, the term, I know he used it in the theological example as well, but using the term father doesn't, it seems to have a threshold, right? I think you would agree, who dis,
I can
but
address that. Yeah.
yeah, but there is also an important point to be noted that the threshold isn't exactly clear. Like whether someone is a stepfather or a parent, there is these social aspects to the term. So that's kind of where I do think I'd push back on your points about like a subjectivity. Overall, there were a couple parts in there where Cease, I don't know if it was because you didn't fully know the rules, right, of how the time works or whatever, but I think you could have been a little more aggressive with your time. Who just did dominate a little bit in there, a little bit, but then again, you brought it back so quickly. And yeah, so I will concede that my judgment here, it does go to who dis by a hair, and I will be totally open to taking that as perhaps my own bias. Grill me in the comments. These two deserve both W's, so I'm willing to take the L on this judgment. And props to both of you so much. Cease, please don't take my judgment any more than perhaps just bias. At the end of the day, I don't know what else to judge off of. Like I'm trying to be as impartial as I can here, but bro, you guys did just so good. It makes me honestly tear up. Anyways, I'm gonna leave it at that. Much love, much respect.
Did you say one? Sorry.
Thank you.
Who dis
Okay.
by a hair. And I do have my notes here that I could go into more in depth in another conversation, which I would love to, but the floor is yours now, guys.
Okay, so Logic Troll's voting for who dis. Okay, and then who wants to go next after Logic Troll?
Me and said he wanted to go next.
Haru said he wanted to go last.
I'm going last. I already volunteered for that.
You can go, then I'll go after you.
Great. Honestly, I I don't know. I feel like both of you were doing pretty good at first. Like your openings, I thought were both relatively strong. I thought your rhetoric was pretty good. I have to disagree with the position on the objective truth of female and male existing in a state where, I don't know, it was confusing the way he put it, like before human minds, animals existed, and that somehow demonstrates like the fact that there's male and female before the human mind demonstrates that they exist as a objective fact. I felt like that was a strange way to put that. And I also just disagree on the face of it. I mean, obviously, like there are hermaphroditic animals, and then of course there are like animals that change gender like partway through their life, like the larger of the group in clownfish will, if the female dies, the largest of the males return into the female. And then there's also mimicking gender within species, so like smaller gardener snakes will give off female pheromones in order to like protect themselves, but also not to just protect themselves, to like get warmth and other things. So I just don't even think that's true on the face of it. Like species exist in a state of like flux long before the human mind could observe it. And then second of all, like the human mind right now, like Do trans people exist without your human mind to observe it? Yes, they do right now. Gender exists on a binary, objectively, according to your worldview, if you were to put in those terms, which are just bizarre. I don't know. That was all super confusing to me. Did not agree with the take. And then when we got into like the 14 minutes like of them sort of going back and forth, I felt like you guys were sort of talking past each other and nobody was really even like actually engaging with the other one had to say, which I found a bit, I don't know, upsetting, I guess. I wish you guys had like really truly listened to what the other person was saying more instead of like preparing to formulate I don't know, a way to dissuade that claim immediately. And it just it felt like you guys weren't really listening to each other a lot of the time, which is frustrating. And then when we got into like the little informal bit here where you were meant to steelman the other, I thought that Cease dominated, and I thought that Cease was dominating in the end with rhetoric and such. I don't know. That's just my personal opinion. So obviously I give the W to Cease, and that's all I have to say. Anyways.
All right, Logic Troll and C, thank you for your candor. Is there any other judge who wants to go next? Bob or Cage?
My phone's at 4% anyway, so. All right. It was a very good debate, very interesting, very close. I think there were times when Cease was ahead, and I think he just made some good points sometimes. Okay, so let me go through my notes a bit because I wrote down when I thought people said interesting things. So Cease's opening, he did define valid in the opening, and I guess who disagreed with it. So he explained how there might not need to be necessary and sufficient conditions by referencing a cluster concept, and how these words, how you can use words differently, different contexts, like the word parent can mean different things. He did lay out sufficient conditions as the disjunct. I don't remember the disjunct though, but he called out possible failures, of a purely biological definition by not being able to account for a common usage of the terms. I think that's a good point. He laid out how experience is related to being man, and I'll bring this up again, the cross-exam part. One example he gave was like body count and shame. He claimed Cease claimed Hudis will have to show a contradiction in his view. I don't think that's true. I don't know why Cease said that. He doesn't have to do that, but Cease's opening was pretty strong and clear what he wanted to argue for. Hudis started off saying the Ben Shapiro phrase, facts don't care about your feelings. If trans woman being woman relies on one's stances, attitudes, and feelings, then it can't be a fact because those are objective, stance-independent things, he says. If gender is a social construct and social constructs are not unchanging, stance-dependent truth, and the claims of Cease's gender theory can't be objective facts. So he's trying to point out how it's hard to engage in language using these subjective terms. Very interesting points. So let's see. Hold on, wait. Oh, yeah. He also gave like some scientific references for his definition of, which was the gamete-based definition of men and women. So it was pretty close. I think Cease's opening was a little more structured and a little more focused on substance. So I'll probably give openings to Cease. Let's see, the cross-exam first round. So Cease tried to challenge the epistemic access. So if Hudis defined gender as biological, we don't always have access to people's like gametes and stuff. I think Hudis gave a good answer to this. He said we look at like secondary characteristics that are usually associated with it. He also later on brought up the example of like the chicken, which is pretty good. And Cease tried to challenge Hudis on the need for necessary conditions, and he brought up the piles of sand versus the mountain of sand. It seemed like Hudis agreed with that. And Cease asked about, oh, yeah, this is a good point, I think, on Cease's part. He asked about God the Father being called he, him, and a father when he doesn't have any biology. I don't think Hudis answered that too well, to be honest. I think that was a really good point. And then Cease brought up the Superman example, and Hudis denied that Superman is a man, but Cease pointed out that Hudis's definition of man is in conflict with how we generally use the term in society, so lacks explanatory power. I think that was a good point on Cease, so I think that cross-exam part goes to Cease. Now, when Hudis, sorry, do you want me to speed it up, or do you not mind?
Oh, you're good. You're totally good. And then after this, we're going to do questions, comments, critiques, and concerns from the audience. So we will be doing audience comments, questions, critiques, and concerns. But no, you're good. Do your thing.
Shut up, pool vibes. Okay. So this is when Hudis is examining Cease. Hold on. Okay, forget that.
Also, get a charger so you don't drop on us mid critique.
Yeah, it's at 4%. I should be okay. Hudis tried showing necessary. Oh yeah, he tried showing the necessary link between sex and gender, because in every time you determine whether someone's gender, sex is involved, and he tried to use this to argue that they're not actually distinct. But Cease responded by saying they're not identical, but they are related. And Hudis challenged the epistemic axis on Cease's end. How do you know someone's mental states? I think that was a good point. And then Hudis challenged Cease on having changing definitions, not allowing for coherent communication. Cease says it's fine for concepts to change, and then he asked him if the law of identity can change. And Cease tried like point out other logics and stuff like that, and he kind of said it can change. I don't think that was a good response. Cease, I think Hudis looked pretty good there, so I'll give that a little cross exam to Hudis. All right, the second cross exam. Cease is trying to. Cease was cross examining Hudis. Cease was trying to argue that we can communicate clearly with subjective, possibly changing definitions, and he used thirsty as an example. And Hudis said that since gender references mind-independent things, it can't be subjective opinion. We're describing and discovering things in the world. We're not just using sounds to label them. But Cease replied saying that that could be true, and it could still be. Oh wait, that doesn't make sense. Okay, that's all I have for that one. I wrote unsure who to give that one to. I guess I'll give that one a tie. The second cross exam, Bob getting paid. Hudis showed the Venn diagram, okay, asking for what seemed to be necessary or sufficient conditions between men and women. But Cease's view doesn't seem to he didn't seem to commit to those. So, but Cease didn't point that out, so that's on Cease's end. And then Hudis asked for the psychological scheme of man versus woman. How does Cease differentiate between masculine women and feminine men? And Cease said it depends on the case and desires for certain identities. And Hudis continued to ask for sufficient traits. So it kind of seemed like Hudis didn't understand, I don't know if he didn't understand it, but he wasn't representing the view that well here. But I don't think Cease responded that well to him either. And Hudis was rhetorically dominating him here. So, but because he was kind of strawmanning Cease, I'm going to give this part to Cease.
Y'all should actually appreciate what Mob's doing here, man. This is actually fucking so good. I love it, Mob.
Yeah, this
fucking
is
use literally, bro. Take all the time. Like, fuck off, yo. This is what it's about. I love it, Mob. Keep
Yeah, yeah,
going.
I'll
yeah,
make
yeah.
mine longer on purpose.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So for these debates, like I really appreciate that you're like taking the time and really looking at the arguments and the details. And
Who's
yeah,
talking shit in the comments?
yeah, and this is gonna go on YouTube, and I do want my debates to be professional, educational, and entertaining. So take all the time you need, and yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm almost done anyway. This is the open dialogue part. Okay, they talked about epistemic access again. Talk about epistemic access to who is what gender, to know who's what gender under a biological definition, since we don't always know sometimes. Who just pointed out, Cease's definition also seems to require biological aspects Cease doesn't have access to, so they kind of repeated a lot of stuff. Who just also pointed out that we look at the second. Oh, so reading gave the chicken example. That was a good point. Cease tried to point out that Hoodis' definition is too narrow and doesn't account for intersex people. And Hoodis said that's not an issue, since those are deviations from the norm. I think that was a really good point by Cease. And then Hoodis asked, how does Cease have access to people's desires? That's a good point by Hoodis, sorry. And then Hoodis gave an argument, which was good, because it was our first, basically formal argument in the debate. He said if gender is internal and self-reporting, and this varies across people and changes, then what's a woman varies and changes, and we can't have a coherent language structure in society and understand each other because these are like private people. Sounds like a Wittgenstein view. And then C said we use language like this all the time, and we can obtain scientific evidence for certain mental states. And who just challenged that by saying people could lie, which may be a little bit too skeptical of a response, but I don't know if it went. Okay, for the open dialogue, I think Cease did slightly better. And for closing, I don't have anything, and the Steelman's part or anything. So I think Cease won by a little bit. That's my final decision.
Okay. Thank you for your candor. Cage?
My bad. Yeah, that was long as fuck.
Oh, no, that's perfect.
Thank you, brother. That was thorough. I appreciate it.
Shut up, Mars Queef. Okay.
Cage, you want to go?
No, but I guess I don't have a choice. So I suppose I wrote notes in the opening, and unlike Mob, I'll keep them concise. What's his name? Cease gave definitions, right, for his terms, but on his terms, it's just trivial that trans identities are valid, given what he meant by valid, or that it's some type of occurrence or real phenomena that's understandable. No shit, right? People who say they're trans exist. On gender identity, he explained that it's some psychological experience of their biosex in society. Cool, awesome. Who's this on his view? It's not valid on his view means some stance independently true proposition, or what he presumably meant or said is based in fact. And then he clarified it's an objective statement. So the opening is entirely horrible rhetoric by both, but I'm giving it to to Who's This, just because he gave an argument, and Cease just motivated the way he uses language, and which is trivial on his view. The cross-examinations, I feel like Cease did a good job at motivating some Wittgensteinian view of non-essentialism, right? Appealing to the folk usages, demonstrating, with the game language, it's all fine and good. I think he motivated that rather successfully. Mob displayed all of this. The closings, the rest of the sort of rebuttals were this turned into a Frege versus Wittgenstein debate on the use of language instead of actually the topic, which was trans identities are valid. I don't think anybody remembered the topic. I swear halfway through I was gaslit that the topic was where it should be essentialists about language versus we shouldn't be essentialists about language. Probably because that's like the argument who's just gave. If trans identities are not based on objective statements, then they're not valid. Okay, okay, but whatever. So I don't want to give it to either of you, but I don't know. Like I'm even a non-essentialist about language, sort of reveal biases. Um, so Cease did appeal to my intuitions there. So I'm just giving it to Cease, not because of the rhetoric that was god awful, but because of the substance provided. I think Mob.
Okay. Cage, thank you for your candor. And now, Haru, time for your judgment.
Can I have a round of applause in the chat first off for these two amazing, amazing opponents through their cognitive abilities and through like their debate tactics. Their rhetoric was amazing through this conversation. So can I just get a round of applause in the chat? Yeah, thank you, thank you so much. Yeah, so like thank you, Cage, for not making a tie-breaking vote because I was extremely nervous that's what was going to happen. Yeah, so I would just say that under like the denotations of the active, like when like the opponents are actively alluding to their definitions and to the topics that they are actively discussing through this coordinates, like through the opening statement, I would agree that like both of the opponents had great rhetoric through like the definitions that they were giving, through the arguments that they were giving, through the syllogisms that they were actively giving. Somewhat of a syllogism, not like a followed syllogism, I would say. Yeah, so yeah, so like a great question for like the first cross-examination, like I would say, would be, wait, re wait, one of my notes says reclaims time, not at the right time. He should have done it earlier into the debate. That was happened twice in the debate, twice in the debate times with Cease not standing up to like his opponent when his opponent was somewhat overwalking him. But Hudish, you did great with your cross-examinations. You didn't let your opponent run, you didn't like let yourself get walked over and everything like that. I would agree with that because Cease interrupted 3 times on the first cross-examination, according to my notes. And wait, I believe Hudis only interrupt. It was either yeah, it was either 7 or 8 times. I'm okay with that. The second cross-examination though, that that is where like I got my deciding vote. Because of like the open dialogue and everything like that. But the cross-examination, I would say, like really did tell a lot about the second time. Because from my notes, when Cease was discussing and everything, his opponent interrupted him 17 times in a 5-minute cross-examination. Let me look. Cease only interrupted about 5 times during that of a cross-examination, but Cease did try and reclaim his time while it was the opponent's time. I would just like to highlight that, which I would say you weren't like it wasn't informed enough about what a semi or a formal debate would be. Yeah, I'm just like because like I would say both rhetorics is pretty good, both like of the substitute that was involved through this dialectic, through like these verbiages and through like these opponents clashing sides and everything. I would agree both of these individuals were great through both of their characteristics. I would say through the analogies of the chicken and the rooster analogy, through the sand, mountain, hill analogy, I would agree with that. Those were great. And one more round of applause before I give my vote to the chat and everyone. Yeah, so like Haru's final decision. Who dis? Drumroll, please. Is not the winner in my vote due to the interruptions mostly and due to the connotations and denotations. Uh, through the points that I gave, like through the point percentages that I gave, I would say Cease got 50 out of 100 points, and Who Dis got 45 out of 100 points. I would say both of these individuals did do great. The original point totals before I started actively like subtracting like points and everything like that was 85 for 80 for Cease and 85 for Who Dis. Before I started subtracting penalties and everything like that, I can send both of y'all and anyone who wants it
Yes!
my
We
judge
get it!
my
Dumb fuck!
judge
We get it! Holy shit, you said it 10 minutes ago! We get it!
yeah,
Bro,
can
don't
I
interrupt
can
me,
I
bro.
finish? Yeah, so basically I would say that if anyone does want my judge sheet, there was a lot of things that I didn't fill out. I didn't say. But feel free to DM me. Feel free to DM Coco. I'm going to send it to Coco on Discord. Feel free to ask him for the judge sheet. But thank you once again, everyone, for being at this debate event because we worked so hard. Every individual did do great
We?
in the debate
I'm
event.
working hard right now! Shut up!
Good job, Haru. That was sick.
Um,
Good
I'm
job,
proud of
dude.
you, Haru, bro.
yeah. So,
Wait, who?
wait, Haru, who did you say what?
I remember! Because it took 17 years to say your fucking judgment!
Haru, wait, who did you say what?
Yeah. At this, before like my judging correction, I said I was going to purposely make it longer because of people being mean in the chat for mob.
Wait, who?
And that was my reason why. But like Haru's final decision is Who Dis, drumroll please, did not win the debate.
I'm
Okay.
gonna call him a slur, I swear to God. I'm gonna do it.
Okay, but both people did a very good job. Thank you guys for debating on my platform. I appreciate it. This platform cannot operate without the people who are debating, the people who are judging. Thank you, judges. Thank you, debaters. Everyone that's here, thank you for the gifts. Thank you for supporting the debaters and the judges with your gifts, and thank you for supporting me. The final judge's decision would be 4-1. Ceasetoknow wins the judge's decision. And in regards to the audience vote, I'll be posting that later tonight or tomorrow. So, given that, we're now going to go to audience questions, comments, critiques, or questions, comments, or
I'm gonna grab
opinions.
some water real quick.
Yep. And
Coco,
also,
if you yeah.
you can go ahead.
Damn, I wanted to ask the question who this. I'm gonna have to wait.
All right, but what were you saying?
Yeah, Coco, if you want me to tell the audience vote right now, I can because I took a screenshot of the poll.
No, we don't gotta do that. We can
Okay.
leave it for later. Yep.
Forget Coco's trying to run a business here. He's trying to get engagement on his posts. If people already know, they won't give a fuck.
Oh,
So,
well, you know.
if anybody has questions for me, if we could do this now, because I really, really have to go soon. I have
I
to
don't
go
really
soon.
want to ask you a question. I just want to glaze. I love the way you debate. I like your demeanor. I just think you need to be more, not rhetorical, but like more, I guess, aggressive. I suppose you sort of don't, manage the same energy as the opponent. But I love the way you debate. I love your rhetoric. I love your demeanor.
I
Okay,
appreciate it.
yes, I didn't mind it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Also,
So,
judges, you don't have to stay. It's up to you. But yeah. Thank you guys for being here.
oh, I'm gonna
Alrighty,
go ahead and ask.
Coco. Love you. Hope you're having fun, man. Congratulations. Doing great. Stay focused. Stay hungry. My question or challenge to both interlocutors to start this off is to sincerely compliment your opponent and express one thing that you learned from each other. Thank you.
I think Cease is.
Wow.
I think Cease does a good job of staying calm and cool and collected. I think that plays to his favor, especially because so much of debating is like how well you can keep your composure, especially under pressure. As far as his arguments, I'm staunchly against them and I reject them. But if anything, I learned a little bit more about Cease's how he views the world, which it ultimately kind of confirms some suspicions that I had. But yeah, I think Cease at least is cordial and seems to be genuinely believing in what he believes and not like out of some, I don't know, weird motivation or anything like that. So I just reject it, and I think that it's inverted. But I mean, I think you're a sincere person.
Appreciate it. What I'll say about you is I think you are good at pressuring. Like I think that you're good at being aggressive in the way in which you engage, and that can definitely put some people on the back pedal. I think if somebody isn't ready for that kind of pressure, you could easily get somebody rattled, even if their ideas may be better than yours. You might be able to rattle somebody just through pure sort of the aggressive nature in the way in which you engage. So I think that's an interesting tactic that I think can be very useful in these types of conversations at times. And so it was interesting navigating that pressure. It wasn't something that I've faced before, so appreciate the experience.
Oh, iron sharpens iron, brother.
All right, I have a question, one for each.
That's my question. Yeah, I was waiting before Shark, and then Shark
Okay, yeah, sure.
It's gonna be a little long because it's more so of a comment. It's like more so of a comment and a question. Like who dis when you were talking about the efficacy of a definition and that a definition must be able to sort of work and function, right? You were saying it has to be useful, and if it can't be, if it doesn't fit some sort of necessary association with something, then it's not very useful because it's vague and it won't do the job, right?
Well, yeah. Like I'm gonna give you an example. Like, I mean, would you agree that
I know circle? I understand.
Has to include something with 3 points.
Yeah, like circle. I understand, like
3
circle and
points is a
triangle,
necessary
like
condition of the
those metaphors.
definition.
I'm not really trying to debate here.
No, I know, but I'm just letting you know kind of like my position.
Yeah, I understand. I remember the analogy, and I thought it was a really good one, right? But I disagree with you in the sense that when observing, so it's more so that I want to bridge a gap here, maybe. So it helps you understand like where some people are coming from, because I feel like maybe you think that we're coming from a place of sort of going against like I don't know, like anti-culture or something like that, right? I'm an anthropologist, right? So when I study anthropology and I have to go out into a field or go study human beings, right, which is what the field of science of anthropology is. I'm not really an anthropologist yet. I mean, I'm like first year into college, but I'm studying it, and I don't want to be disingenuous, right? But my understanding is, right, that if I were trying to commit an efficient study of a set of human beings, I'd have to accurately describe the phenomena that I'm viewing, right? So when looking at the word sex and gender, what accurately describes reality, right? What human beings experience, how they act whenever we look at culture and societies, right? The word that better fits that structure is the word, the sort of idea that gender and sex are disassociated due to the fact that we see phenomena throughout history where they're split. So that's the sort of the one thing. And with like the psychological, I think you were sort of hinting at an issue with like psychology. Sorry?
I said I reject that.
You don't understand how in the field of
how do you look for a woman identity when you're excavating bones?
Yeah, so that's archaeology. Hold on, Cease, hold on.
Yeah, but
that's so who this? Hold on. Let me just please. So anthropology has multiple fields, right? But the three biggest ones are biological anthropology, where it's the study of sort of viewing how humans got here, our DNA, our genome, the history of our sort of like transitionary species in our past, right? There's archaeology, which is another field, right? That sort of is a subset of cultural anthropology. And then there's cultural anthropology, which describes phenomena that's observed throughout a set of human beings, right, throughout history. So and I don't want to use the word term aminals, right, but so you can get in the sort of mindset of how this functions. The same way that a tiger scientist is going to go into the field and observe a set of tigers and describe the phenomena that they're observing, either through the psychology or the way they act, right? An anthropologist is going to want to observe the creatures that are human beings, right, and in their habitats, and describe the phenomena that they're observing, right? So that's the same function. It's not that gender and sex, or I understand that you're gonna have motivations aside from the science or from the purely sort of view that we're gonna have to study these creatures and explain what they're experiencing. You have to like set other motivations, and that's fine, right? But anthropologically, when trying to observe human beings, you can't insert your own bias. So you have to just keep it at what is being explained to you. You were hinting at like some sort of something wrong with psychology as a field or their experiments. How do you know that they're being truthful, right? If you remember how experiments function, right? There's dependent and independent variables, right? If you can keep that in mind and what those accomplish, and looking at science normally, and anthropology, right, and psychology as well, when creating a psychological experiment, you don't tell so if you've ever gone through a psychological experiment, right?
Wait, hold on a second.
There's multiple variables, and they're all the data is skewed to sort of eliminate them, right?
So what is the independent variable in the experiment that proves that man and women is in reference to a mental construct?
I'm so sorry. Before you get there, I really have to get going. Does anybody have any last questions for me before I run?
I have a question. One for Ceasetoknow, one for Who Dis.
Go ahead.
Ceasetoknow, what was it like? I'm actually commending you right now. What was it like to debate? So don't answer my question right away. What was it like to debate someone who is so conceptually impoverished? And Who Dis? How did it feel to give those rhetorical backshots?
To get or to give?
I said to give.
I don't know. Maybe you were projecting backshots because that's what you're into, bro. But I don't feel like I got backshoted at all. In fact, the judges even agree that it was a.
No, you're the one shooting
quite
on
a
Cease's
close
back.
call.
Who dis? When I'm saying you're giving when you're giving rhetorical backshots, that means you rhetorically won, slow boy. Cease. How did it?
I thought you said getting.
Persevere through debating with someone who's so conceptually impoverished.
Well, I'm used to it. I mean, I deal with a lot of people on this app who are having a different discussion than what I'm saying, right? Like they have concepts and definitions that they're entitled to, right? But they don't have to be mine. And to ignore the reality that other people can use these words differently is a mistake. I'm not telling him how to use his language. I'm just saying that historically people use these words to mean these other things. So there's a lot of background noise.
I don't know if you know.
No. Give me a historical source. That's
I think you're just a bit of troll, bro.
Cease, can you seriously, bro? Can you provide a actual historical source that says woman refers to something other than female?
Yeah, Simone de Beauvoir.
Simone de Beauvoir, a fucking modern gender theorist. Are you serious?
Yes.
Hold on, guys. This is not supposed to be like a secondary debate. We're supposed to.
That's fair.
I wasn't trying to provoke a debate. And then obviously Who Dis. I admire your confidence. Even though you're confidently wrong, your confidence allowed you to rhetorically dominate. So I at least want to give you that. So you did give rhetorical backshots. I think even Cease acknowledges that he just received the most crazy, vicious, and long rhetorical backshots that I've ever witnessed, at least. So you at least get that, but you should definitely do some reading.
All right, I appreciate you guys. Thank you for letting me up. And sorry I couldn't answer more questions. If anybody has more questions, feel free to DM me, but I gotta head out. Thank you so much for having me on.
Let me know.
Have a good one.
Cheers. Good night.
Okay.
That guy's funny.
All right, can I get back to my question now?
Yeah, go for it, and then Dream of Dawn has to go.
All right, yeah, and so just to finish this off, honestly, so you were hinting at issues with psychological studies. What I didn't mean, there's not an independent variable when describing phenomena, right? There's a difference between sort of soft sciences and hard sciences, and the nature of how they attribute data and how they accurately inform people of that data. What I was trying to hint at, hold on, just one second. What I was trying to get, what I was trying to do with the dependent and independent variable is help you understand how when doing psychological experiments, right, they obfuscate, they do not tell you the true goal of the experiment. That would be ridiculous. They never do that. They are studying specific phenomena that they observe when giving people specific data points or telling people to do specific things and how they act. They don't tell you what the true goal of the experiment is. And anthropologically, Christina Mead, I can't remember her the exact name. Christina Mead and multiple other anthropologists throughout the 1800s up to 1935 conducted multiple experiments, multiple sort of cultural endeavors, right? Because you have to go to when doing
just
anthropology,
observation, not
when doing cultural
experiments.
anthropology. Yeah, go
Not
ahead.
experiments,
Question, bro.
observations, right?
Yeah, you observe.
Yeah,
You
do you
observe,
think
right?
biological
You
science
can do psychological.
is a soft
Hold on.
science or a hard science?
You can do psychological experiments, which go hand in hand with cultural anthropology.
Can you
But you
answer the
cannot
question,
do
please?
anthropological experiments. That's ridiculous. You're observing animals the same
Come on,
way
man.
that people
Answer
who
the
study
question,
tigers
please.
would function.
Is biological sciences a hard science or a soft science?
Yeah, that's biological anthropology, not cultural anthropology. Right? There's a difference.
The
I
physicists
asked
still
you
say
if it
it's
was a hard or
soft.
soft science, sir.
Yeah, biological. No, that's hard. Yeah, that's a different field of study than
At
cultural.
least
That's
you're
cultural
smart
anthropology.
enough to know that.
Yeah, cultural anthropology is also a field of study, which is a different form of science where you observe phenomena, right? And so when you're trying to actually inform people of that phenomena, you would use the word gender and sex differently.
Okay, thanks, man. Thanks for sharing, man.
I don't know. All right.
Okay, I have a question. So
Hold on. Jim of Dawn has to go, and then
Oh my goodness, bro.
That was before you.
Dream is just going to yap about math and bullshit.
True. No, I just want to understand a bit more of Houdis's standpoint. So, do you think, like, just to clarify, do you think that Cease's symbols, when he uses the words trans, whatever, do you think those map to an actual ontology? Like, do you think there's something behind?
No.
Okay.
No, so they don't have any ontological. I mean, look, maybe you can say they're a thought, and thought has ontology in the mind. I mean,
I don't mean
I'm
it that
happy
way.
to
I mean, like, there's something
go that far.
like, yeah.
But
I would say,
it
like, there's
doesn't
something
actually
he's
map
pointing
out to
to
something that
biologically.
exists in the objective world. It's like a mere like mind state, and mind states are by definition not objective.
Do you think that Cease could be pointing to more than a mind state, possibly some biological state as well?
Because it's always in reference to some kind of shared or individual, psychological schema or set of traits, right, that they consider what, woman or a man to be.
Yeah. So do you think that, like, when Cease is referring to like a trans person, you think that doesn't map to any sort of real thing?
No. I believe that there's people out there that actually believe that they are the opposite, sex that they were born as. Right. I believe that. I'm totally happy to acknowledge that. I acknowledge that people have incongruences, and that those incongruences can actually exist and can be held in a person's mind like that. What I'm rejecting is the contents of the mental states, right?
So
the
knowing
propositions.
that, how can you say that one definition is better than the other? It's so hilarious.
Well, I assume then,
because I'm rejecting the contents of their mental state. So if I have a mental state that says, that the sky, I'm walking, or that the sky is black, right? When the sky is clearly blue, it doesn't reflect actual reality, right?
Do you think, because I think, and this is just from how I felt Cease was talking, do you think Cease could be talking more than just hey, it's more than just what they say? There seems to be certain actions or correlations with
No, because at the end of the day, the only thing that's necessary for somebody to be a man or a woman, as Cease demonstrated, is for them to have the intention or the desire. Because Cease wouldn't go as far as to saying that you have to be a transmedicalist, or you have to actually, align your external presentation with your internal, sense of self, right? He wouldn't go that far. He said, no, the internal sense of self is enough, right? So it's like.
Do you think that internal sense of self is affected in any way by the biology?
In some sense of biological determinism? No, I reject that.
Oh, not in biological
structures in the
determinism. That it
brain
could have
that
a
cause them
strong
to be
effect.
this way.
Sorry, say it again.
I don't believe there's structures in the brain that cause them to be this way, if that's what you're asking.
Okay, so then you would say that his symbols purely map to kind of social phenomena where people may
Yeah,
feel
like
some way socially, but not
yeah, it's like
in
kind of
any
like the
sort of
distinction
way
between the impression
biologically.
and the idea that Hume brings, right? It's like the impression is not the same as the idea. Like the impression is that reception of external information, right, from the external world, and then the
Okay, then, oh,
idea
sorry.
is like your subjective or your intuitive interpretations, observations, like predications about
Who
stuff.
dis? I just want one more question.
Wait, wait, wait,
Yeah,
wait.
can you
I've been waiting.
just a
I've been
second, bro?
waiting.
Just a second,
Oh
please.
my
Yeah,
goodness.
I just have one last question
Yeah,
myself. It's
like
just
don't in the middle of
I
stuff.
said
so
relax, bro. You're
So
talking a lot.
I'm saying
wait.
from Cease's position, the impression is the same as the idea, right? There is no thing out there external to his mind or like a way of for us to accurately verify what the idea, right? Because it's an internal mental thing. You can't isolate brain matter. You can't isolate neurotransmitters.
Like you gotta wait, bro.
Do you take so you don't take any self-reported data as fact, or
No, I just think that the self-report is not the essential trait. The
okay,
essential trait is the biological reality.
okay, I have two more questions actually. The thing that confuses me then is
question, and that's it, because you're kind of hogging up the time.
okay, fair enough. I think my last question is just if there was an ontology to what Cease was talking about, like some sort of biological reality, would you say his terms are valid in that case?
No, because I would just ask him what they are, and then he could never provide them to me.
Okay.
No. In this case, there is an ontology he's pointing to. Like he's saying these biological traits.
Yeah, but okay. So you're just saying that a woman is a person,
Bro, it's period. End
with
of
these
story. End of
biological
story.
traits. But I guarantee you
Let's
that
just
the
write a
traits
book
that
right
he's
now.
going to
Yeah.
give for what that constitutes a woman are not essential traits. Because he's going to say,
Amen,
having breasts,
amen.
having long hair, having a high-pitched voice.
Amen.
But when I asked him, are those essential? No, that's not it. Okay, so what is it? And that's why I brought out the Venn diagram, because you notice he couldn't he couldn't fill a single blank in the Venn diagram, give just a single trait that belongs on either side of the two distinct categories. He couldn't do it.
Glory be to God. Glory be to God. Okay.
Well, Mace,
My
if you
turn.
just, come on now. Like, this is just
So,
blatantly
so I'm
wrong,
not
though.
gonna, bro. Let me. So my question to you is, are you an animal? Yes or no?
Are you a what? I mean, a what?
Are you an animal?
Animal? No, like humans and non-human
You
animals.
guys are Christian. I mean,
Are you an
that's
animal?
why I
Yes
use the
or
word
no?
creature.
I said relax, bro. I said
That's why I use the word.
I mean, you could say we're like a rational animal, but that in itself entails a different ontology.
No, I'm talking about you're a dog. Yes or no?
Am I a dog? I don't know. Maybe I think I just kind of walked around the stage, kind of like left my mark, if you know what I mean. And
wait. So if you're an animal
and claim the territory, I came into enemy
what do you
territory,
mean?
had the
Maybe?
judges
What
quivering
you mean?
on whether
So do you believe?
who won.
Because I'm trying to understand if you really do like reject the whole idea of trans identities, right? Because you keep saying maybe. Like, what do you mean by maybe? Like, if
Maybe
you
what?
reject, if you just reduce people to like biological processes, you should be able to answer this question: are you a dog? Yes or no?
No, I'm not reducing people to biological processes, dude. You are.
So, no.
My
Okay, so why can't you answer the question? Are you a dog? Yes or no?
I'm just saying. This is all I'm saying. No, I'm not a.
Yes or no?
I'm
Are
not.
you
No.
a dog or a cat, bro?
No,
let
sir.
me shift
No,
the
sir.
point.
I'm a
How do
human
you
being.
have sex? How do you have sex with your woman?
Host, what is going on?
Yo, wait, Kunta, nah, bro.
Come on, bro.
Hey, Cole, what is going on, bro? What is this guy? What is this guy saying?
You better chill,
bro, come on.
Yo, Kunta, you're a chaplain, bro.
Coco's
Have some demeanor.
Coco, it's about the topic. Coco,
What's your point? What's your point, bro? This is a professional event.
We're talking about trans identities because the whole time his whole view is about reducing C's to biological processes. There's no emotion. There's no social aspects of humanity. There's no any form of that, right? It's all about just biological processes. So I want to know if he really values emotions, his social awareness, or any of those sorts. I want to know if he really values it, or he really believes in like just by reducing people or himself to biological processes. That's what I want to know.
I mean, I reject that, bro. Especially because in my opening statement, I made it very clear that my contention wasn't against the value and dignity and the worth of my opponents and, the proponents of his view, right? That's not what I'm arguing against here. I'm arguing against the ideas. So I reject your miscategorization of my intentions and my motives here.
So do you disagree with trans identities? That's what I want to know.
No, obviously not, dude. Are you
Okay,
okay? Bro, what world are you in right now? What
okay,
kind of question is that?
so you do believe in you do believe in Caesar's ideas. Before you were telling Shark that this is what I learned from it. I reject all of his ideas, but now you're saying that you do agree with C. So you're not a biological animal, right? You have emotions, you have different sensory experiences.
I literally said
and you
that,
know
dude.
how.
I said that humans are ontologically distinct from animals. Did you not hear
Okay,
that?
so and that's basically what C's was arguing for. So, bro, just be honest. That's all I'm trying to say. You know how to have
Bro, this
sex
is
in different
crazy.
ways? Like
This guy is
it's that simple, bro.
incoherent, like
Like when you
psychobabble.
have
It's wild.
sex, you don't just bark at your
Bro,
woman.
how many
Like,
joints did you smoke today? Like, you gotta lay off, bro, because my man.
Pretty rhetoric.
Okay, but yeah,
Just out of pocket.
are there any other questions? Can we officially conclude the event?
I'm gonna ask. No, Link is next. I gave Link my spot.
Okay,
Just real quick. Hey, Link. Ko, is this being recorded?
yeah, I'm gonna post this on YouTube.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Awesome.
Hey, yeah, I'm. This question is neither for nor against anything you've said. It's really just to, I think, further get some ideas from you on the topic. So, if we lived in a world or universe in which there were no, let's say, gender expectations, where everybody was okay with any sex living or presenting or behaving however they wanted, okay, and I mean that to the fullest extent possible, like. If you're a male or if you're female, you can do anything that you feel is natural and nobody looks at you sideways at all. What do you suspect would occur with trans identity, if anything?
Well, we'd cease to exist. I mean, literally, think about it. Are trans people like evolutionary, like dead ends?
I'm not sure. Like, if you
Like,
could,
for
just
example, when somebody mutilates their genitals, with all due respect, right, and essentially like cuts off their actual function of their gonads and their reproductive organs, they can no longer reproduce, right? They can no longer pass on their seed and continue the evolution of the human species.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like an evolutionary dead end. My heart aches for people that do that to their bodies. Like, there was a doctor that I saw that he had something in his head that made him amputate both his legs, and there was a picture of him smiling. But it's like, ought we allow people to do that, to like harm themselves in that way?
Yeah. So I think my
it's
question
a difficult
was
moral question, but
I think my question was along the lines of, do you think it would have an impact on like the psychology behind the identifying with the gender that is or isn't associated with the sex? Like, because we always say the femaleness or the maleness. Sorry.
Can you clarify or restate that, please? I didn't quite understand.
Yeah. So if we lived in a world in which males or females had no expectations, so like there was no gender expectations placed upon them, do you think it would have that we would still have a trans identity, like any identity where somebody's like, my body is not matching my.
Of course, that follows. If you don't think that there's anything essential that actually makes you a male or a female, or a man or a woman, then you're just gonna say, well, I can just simply take on the self-perceived,
I don't think what he's saying.
the self-perceived and self-professed identity as such. Like, you can take on a lot of identities, right? You can join a religion and call yourself this identity. You can join a political group. You can join a cause. You can join the community and call yourself this, right? So you're just saying like, oh, I'm just taking on my identity. But you guys go further and say that identity, right? That change of identity, which is from my view, like a willful choice, like that actually changes your ontological status. You guys believe that. I reject that.
I don't think you're answering the right question, Udis. I don't think that's what he meant.
Yeah. So look, if there
I
was
think
no
in
gender norms or
if
roles,
there was no expectations, right?
I don't even know what it
Like what I'm kind of thinking is that nobody would feel out of concert with their body.
I
So
mean,
no
Link,
one.
That's not
looking
true,
like
dude. That's not
I don't
true.
think that'd
That's
be. I
literally
don't.
not true, and I'll demonstrate why. Because part of WPATH, which Ceasetoknow, by the way, right? Part of their recommendations for ameliorating gender dysphoria is something called gender affirming care, and gender affirming care involves the addition or removal of certain sexual biological traits.
That's assuming there's a gender, right? A construct.
No, dude, that's not assuming there's a construct. That's assuming there's a natural biological reality, not some human created, convention.
Who this? What are they in dysphoria for?
You're talking about
With their
maleness.
bodies.
Yeah, with their bodies, right? But what are they associating? What are they associating that they have to do with their bodies in order to change?
They have to be a certain sex to fit into a certain
Okay,
gender.
so yeah, I understand that, right? But
Yeah.
when they're
So what's the issue?
out of place, right? What does it mean for them to think that they're a woman when they're a male? What can they not?
That
What
means
what are
that
the
they're
things?
gender
Hold on.
dysphoric, dude.
Yeah, I know, but what can they not accomplish, and what are the things that they feel different as, right? As a man or as a woman?
What are they cannot accomplish? They
What are
can
they
never be
experiencing?
female.
What are they experiencing that's different?
They can never be female. They'll never experience femaleness, dude.
Okay, they'll never experience.
Will you ever
what?
experience
Hold on.
dogness?
Who this? Who then?
No,
They'll
no,
never
no. Well,
experience.
answer the question, dude. You're not just
All
going
right,
to ask me
okay, go
questions
ahead,
and
go ahead.
grill
Are you
me and
trying to
not
ask-
expect me to ask you a question back.
Well, no,
Can
who
you
did- no.
experience? Answer the fucking question, dude.
Yeah,
Can
go
you
ahead.
experience? Sorry for the language.
It's okay, I get it.
Can you experience dogness?
No, because I'm a human.
Why not, dude?
Because I'm a human being.
Okay, great. So
It's
your
not- it's not-
your
it's not- it's not
ontology
possible.
determines what kind of experience you can
No,
or
not always.
can't have or have access to or don't have
That's not
access
true. That's not true.
Could I
You just,
ask
by
who
your
this?
very
What do
own-
you think
Yeah,
causes?
I'm saying
Wait,
that there's specific things that I cannot experience through my ontology. There's things that I can experience through my ontology, right? That's what it means to be different from something else. A dog cannot experience the things I can.